Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody this morning? Carol, you drive safe. Let me turn that down. That's too loud. I'm too loud. I think I've used Humble Bear before. I'm not sure now. I can't remember if I have or not. Brenda, anybody else that remember me using Humble Bear before? That might not be the right one. Right word today. Right word for the day. Uncas bird. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can.
I'm surprised. It's been one of those mornings.
Oh. Oh, is it weather
Well,
related?
apparently it's funeral season, and my
Oh, yeah.
wife and a bunch of my and grandchildren's went to a multi deal and two folks, and then we got one the next weekend for the next 4 or 5 weekends. It's awful.
Well, you told me about a couple of those. Is there some new ones?
Oh, there's always new ones. I don't mean to laugh or make light of it, but there's.
Good morning, Diana.
So I have, count them, 12 dogs in this house.
You're all by yourself.
Ranging from, no, Caitlin's here.
Okay, there. Okay.
But she's asleep. Ranging from 13 years old to maybe 10 weeks old.
Yeah.
So it's been just one night was enough. And everything that has any kind of cow dog in it whatsoever was just out chasing my horses. And my son has a stupid blue heeler because they're all stupid.
Oh, you've got those dogs also.
I have 5, 6 extra dogs.
Oh, I wasn't counting. I didn't realize.
Oh yeah, it's not just I was the designated dog sitter while everybody went to. Because I'm the guy that could most likely handle them. But they ate
Sure.
2 of my napping tools last night, antler napping tools.
Did you kill them?
They're not dead yet, but I might eat them this afternoon.
Yeah, I'd barbecue those dogs.
I know exactly which one did it too, so that was a bad deal.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that was bad that I found out which one did it.
That's bad. Bad dog.
As Mel Gibson would say in The Patriot, dog makes a fine meal.
Oh, you could have it here. Here's what you should do. You should prepare it in some particular way and then pull all the meat off and prepare it so when they come home you can have a special meal and not tell them what they're eating until it's too late.
You're eating Bluey, the blue heeler.
You're chewing up the dog that chewed up my napping tools.
And she's the one that I just could not get her. She was barking and chasing the horses hard. And I just couldn't get her shut down. She just wouldn't. Everybody stopped chasing except her.
She's been there before, hasn't she?
Yeah, a gazillion times.
Look at the reactions I got from our comment about eating
Ew, yuck.
dog has been on the menu of many.
For human beings for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, I mean, dogs weren't always just for sitting in your lap.
And I don't think I would like enjoy the thought of it at all.
Well,
But
but
if you was hungry enough, you'd eat it.
and you know,
Nope, nope, nope.
no,
Nope, nope, nope.
just think how many people you could feed with Walter, Diana.
Even Canadians ate dogs.
They did. Whether you want to admit it or not, they did. Oh crap! What was I going to say? I had a really good comment.
So we had a famous chief, northern or eastern Shoshone chief.
A bad idea.
we had a
Morning, Mike.
chief that like half the things in the state of Wyoming are named after. He was a fine human being named Washakie, and he of the Eastern Shoshones, and the U.S. government, in its infinite wisdom, decided to put the Northern Arapahoes on the same reservation with the Eastern Shoshones, and they had hated and hunted each other
Forever.
for thousands of years. Probably they were mortal enemies. And when they asked Washakie what he thought about the idea, he was the head man for the band. He said, "I do not like those people. They eat their dogs." And so you know, some tribal peoples ate their dogs, and some tribal peoples didn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would be one that wouldn't, but I might make a drumhead out of her hide or something.
Well, then then you could keep it around kind of in an honorable location above your mantelpiece or something.
Because I'm just like, dog, you're just pushing. You're pushing it.
You're asking for it. Well, slightly different subject, same topic, different animal. You know, growing up, I'll never forget one of the worst. I used to think one of the worst things I ever heard about in history about the Civil War and stuff was that about the siege of Vicksburg and how bad it was for the people who were inside the bombarded city. And I honestly believe now, growing up in the South, that the stories I heard about it were greatly overly sympathetic, I think, at times. But that's beside the point.
They
still
suffered, even if they were Southerners.
Oh, well, they suffered. I have no, that's not what I mean. I just think sometimes it's embellished a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
maybe.
But what I always heard was how terrible it was because they stooped so far that they even had to eat rats.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, then as a young child or a 10 or 12-year-old, whatever I was in the fifth grade, I thought that was horrible. And then later on in life, I met this good friend of mine, Steve Hensley, and he told me he told me one time during some of his studies and efforts, and he was a biologist and zoologist kind of guy too, except he taught school and stuff. He didn't do the kind of stuff we did. We were going somewhere, I'm sure, driving along, and he's telling me about this. And he was telling me about what a great nutritional or protein source rats could be if you raised them domestically for that purpose. And he made them sound, not bad at all.
You put them in a ball, let them roll around for a couple years, and then harvest them.
Feed them good, You could probably feed them different kinds of grain or wheat or, kind of like Kobe beef or
they darn near killed off the human race
Well, that's a good point.
in Europe and probably a lot of other places in the world. They still kill people in the world.
Well, and since you took us down that path, they're
I
also
didn't mean to.
they're all
They're just a hairless tailed squirrel.
true, but the Norwegian versions and the ones that came out of Europe and traveled all over the world aboard ships.
The
Yeah,
black
they were
rat.
responsible for killing off a lot of critters like birds in Hawaii or
Yeah.
different places where they destroyed the natural ecosystem. So they've eat their own. They've done a good share of eating on their own part.
They're like they had to bring in the mongooses to control the rats, and the mongoose turned out to be a bigger deal than every time we think we know better, we mess things up really bad.
Diana, you got brought up a really good point, and not to be ugly or not to be mean. That's why you tell farm children don't they ever name the calves.
Not to ever name their what?
They're calves. Excuse me, they're calves.
Yeah, you don't name calves. You don't name shoats. You don't name any of those creatures that are definitely going to be meat. You can name them. My neighbor, they raise a couple of hogs every year, and one of them's name is always pork chop, and one of them's name is always bacon.
Well, that way you never eat.
And the kid and his grandkids are just like, that's pork chop and that's bacon. And my oldest granddaughter, when she was much younger, she was holding hands with this little boy walking to the hog pens. Got her first kiss that day. She was just like 6 years old, and so was he. And he goes, he said something about that one's pork chop and that one's bacon. And she goes, well, I don't see any bacon. He goes, well, duh, you got to kill it first. And he's just a little 6-year-old ranch kid. And I was like, God dang. It's a hard life.
What Diana said. She said, now she understands why Carol's a vegetarian.
It's a hard life if you don't weaken.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And, I understand why Carol's a vegetarian. We don't help.
No, we don't help much. We're kind of hard on
it. I think my bride would do that.
Vegetarian?
If she thought she could get away with it.
But she lives with you.
She ain't ever not going to have meat on there. There's never going to be a meal here without meat.
You know, and
I'm sorry. Some of us are carnivores and some of us aren't.
No, we all are. Some just choose not to follow the practice.
It's the only reason we have large brains. So
yeah, teeth, and
that's the sole reason that human beings evolved as a species is because we ate meat.
Yeah, we ate this. And
we didn't always kill it. We might have stole it from something else that was better at killing.
We still ate it though.
But we were good at rock chucking.
I never was. Well, I don't say never was, but growing up and then after years later, I mean, I never totally understood why some of the intricacies of being vegetarian, or especially not if you were vegan, and I didn't mean it in mean ways necessarily. Well, not all the time anyway, but some could say we're being that way right now, but we don't.
I ain't being mean. I'm just talking biology.
We're laughing about it. But I had a workmate, or a young lady I worked with at TVA, and we were out somewhere like at a meeting, and I think I discovered that I found out she was vegetarian. We were talking. She was on in my office.
Which means that fish and chicken are okay.
Well, some do, some don't. But yeah,
Or
in her
eggs.
case, I think I'm not sure if she did or not. But the point was there was something came up about a sandwich or something we were going to eat, and I said, "Well, you could eat such and such, couldn't you?" And she said, "Well, not if it's fried bacon grease." And I said, "I'm not my dummy." I mean, I never even thought about it like this. I said, "Well, what would be wrong with that? Everything's better than bacon grease." And it just really had never dawned on me that they wouldn't even eat something that was like cooked in bacon grease because it was bacon. I never thought about it like
she must have been a vegan.
Huh?
So she must have been a vegan.
Well, yeah, maybe. I'm not. Yeah, I can't remember now. She might have been.
Were her eyes all sunken and dark underneath of her eyeballs?
Well, she was about this big around, and she
And
had.
but did she have like these dark circles under her eyes? It's a
maybe she
it's
had
a lack
problems.
it's a lack of stuff you need.
Well, she passed out one day at work, and then she went through this big long stage of being very ill. I mean, they had to cut somebody. I don't think hauled her off in the ambulance. But anyway, she had to go because she happened at work. Of course, she had to go through a whole line of getting cleared to come back to work, and I kept thinking, I kept wanting to tell her,
"Here, eat this cheeseburger."
I kept wanting to tell her she'd eat a few double quarter pounders with cheese from Wendy's. I'd fix that. Hi, Dave's Disney Dreams. How are you, sir?
I love it when like because we have several vegetarian friends that even come to Cowworks where we're branding calves and things.
Yeah.
And they don't try to insert their values on us, but the old ranch women that are there,
oh, I bet
the ones that are cooking things, they're darn sure inserting their values on the vegetarian folks.
Yeah, I bet they are.
Like, you need to eat.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've known those women your whole life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And regardless of what we say, they are the boss of us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is my back to my.
They were darn sure the boss of me.
Well, as an early story in the van as we were driving somewhere, he told me that women are actually in charge, whether you know it or not.
I wrote down, I don't even know if I can find it. I got a little yellow notebook, little Write in the Rain notebook that I write stuff down in.
Yeah.
Mostly recipes. And I wrote down a thought one day. I don't even know if I can find it. It'll be in this random. I was starting a story, an article, and I made a dedication to it. And I never have finished the article, unfortunately, but I will someday when the work's all done.
When the work's all done.
I'm trying to find it.
I'm glad you said that. It brought up the thought I'm going to. Well, while you're trying to find it, this idea of writing stuff down in notebooks is some people do it and some people don't. Some people are better at it than others, like you. You've got amazing journals and books, but I've been doing kind of the same thing for years. And I picked this up yesterday. It was sitting here on my bookshelf, and I thought, well, that's one of my notebooks, and it's nearly full of the same kind of thing. And I picked up about 3 more here. My problem is I've got about 400 notebooks that little notepad books that I've been writing stories and notes down in. I got to collect all that stuff eventually, so it makes some kind of sense. I mean, right now it just wouldn't. And the funny thing about that, I just opened this up, and honestly, I had not looked at this until just now. It's a story that I wrote about Steve Hensley. It's a whole history of things and this, I believe, is a story I wrote that they made a book of stories about him when he passed away from all friends and people that had known him and had adventures with him because he was kind of known for that. And I think that's the story because I'm talking about going. I just saw something about having to gain speed so we could get the Falcon van up over the mountain.
So I wrote this story. I started this story, and it was called "Stories of Many Adventure and the Suck," and I dedicate it to all the snuffies that raised me, which would be all the like sergeants and below in the Marine Corps.
Right.
To Principal Herman H. Bangert, Professor Sandy Chemnitz, rest in peace.
Oh, Sandy passed.
And every female that ever hollered at me.
And you mean that in the most loving way.
And I mean that in the most loving of ways, but yeah. There were things we did not do because the grandmas and mamas and whatnot would come up and get you.
Yeah, and if you don't think they wouldn't,
and that's worse than if dad and grandpa get you.
yeah, this is not a good topic probably to bring up on any given day, but I'm going to do it anyway. When you and I were growing up, and most of the people, and not just you and I, but literally all the people we knew, well, most all the people
we said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am.
Well, we said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. But if one of us had gone down the road,
they would have killed us too.
and they'd done something stupid like cut the roses down or something while we were all playing out in the yard. They would be just as likely to bust our butt as our mamas. And our mamas would have said, well, that's what you get for doing that. I mean, they would.
And you got it again when you got back to the house.
Yeah, we got it again. That's right.
When Ethel down the road called your mama and said, you know what your son was doing?
Yeah, that's a little bit like Schwartz on the Christmas Carol.
It's exactly on the Christmas Story. Yeah, it's exactly that deal. Like, you know who told me this word? Schwartz.
Where my son
Schwartz he got on it and he grinned that evil grin like I got him.
Somewhere across town.
Oh, I didn't mean to take us down this road at all. And I apologize.
Do what now?
I said I did not mean to take us down this
road. Well, we're still warming up here.
I just woke up aggravated at like 04:37 this morning.
Well, I had it because the dogs wanted out. 400 dogs.
Dogs were barking. Puppies were barking. I need outside. I'm like, I'm cool. Actually, I got up at 2 with them, and then I got up at 04:37, and one of them was eating one of my napping tools in the dog bed, which is made out of antler, and I've had for a long, long time, and it survived 1,000 puppies. But it didn't this morning.
Almost didn't survive to be the next birthday. Dave, are you saying we should have put on our halos? I'm going to tell you something about that. That didn't always work. Not where I came from anyway. You could try it, but I promise you by the time you got home, because your mother knew better. That halo was far tarnished by the time you got home. She knew all the stuff.
We were more like archangels than the good ones.
Yeah. I'm sure other kids were a lot
better. We might have chucked Lucifer out of heaven, but we weren't much good for much else.
Good point. Good point. Oh my goodness, mercy!
No.
That made me think of something else when you said about the. Oh, I had a strange, not like yours, but nonetheless a bit odd. I last night I was hurt. Last 3 or 4 days I've had really bad leg cramps, and just I mean, I can't really explain what happens. It's just like they start, and all my nerve, what feeling I have in my legs is all of them are just all. Maybe they're trying to come back to life. I don't know, but anyway, I've been, and since my shoulder surgery, I've been sleeping on the couch in the recliner just about always, and because they said when I had this done, they said don't sleep in the bed for a while because you're going to roll over on it and you're going to try to get up. And they're right. Everything you try to do just hurt like hell, and I paid dearly for it. But last night my legs were bothering me so bad, I said I'm going to go sleep in the bed, and I got up, and I don't know what time it was, and of course I went there with the intention of flipping on a hockey game and watching it, and usually that puts me to sleep anyway, but if it's late at night, but that's what I was going to do. So I went to the bedroom and I got undressed and got ready for bed, and I remember turning on the TV and tuning it to Hulu because that's where I was watching the hockey game pre-recorded, and Brenda even said she came in there and fixed a blanket for me because I was, because of this stuff, I have trouble moving around sometimes. Anyway, that's the last thing I remembered. I never got the TV to the hockey game. And it eventually shut itself off, I guess, unless Brenda did that. Brenda, did you turn my TV off? And I was laying on this arm. I was laying on this shoulder, which I remember laying down with the full intention of sleeping on my left side. So I didn't look, because when I lay on this arm, oh God, I wake up and it hurts. But I woke up on this arm and I don't remember a thing. I must have laid down. My head literally must have hit the pillow and I was gone. Of course, I hadn't slept in 2 days, so that probably had something to do with it.
Like Troy Purcell in a teepee.
A little bit. I
don't even think he ever made it clear down to like a prone position. I think his head actually hit the ground like
that boy could. I do remember that boy could fall asleep quite easily.
Just wherever. And Dave, you're making me laugh too hard. My wife had the exact same experience. Her dad and mom were both teachers, and about half her family were teachers in all the schools in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And she and her sister was better sneakier at it, but than my wife was, because she's the young one. But they couldn't they couldn't even get to the house before mom and dad knew exactly what had happened.
Well, see, that's the thing I was going to point out by Dave's comment and what you're saying. We couldn't go home and lie about it. Hell, they already knew what they already knew.
They got on the party line and like, hey, like, Evelyn, you need to hang up the phone. I need to call Judy because Mark's in trouble with doing
Mark's in trouble.
Mark just shot a squirrel out of my backyard, and I don't want him shooting squirrels in my backyard.
Yeah, he's shooting toward my house. Let's see. We just, of course, sometimes they did let you come home and tell you.
But then Dad was always like, it would be 2 hours before Dad got home.
Oh yeah.
And so then that was the suffer.
Well, that
was a whole part of the suck. was waiting on just wait till your father gets home. And generally, the father just came in and said, "Are you going to do that again?" And no, sir. And that,
yeah,
okay, you can get up.
yeah, but that was enough.
That was all it took.
That was back. That's all. Because everything that had come before that laid the groundwork for that. I mean,
Well, but like all the men I grew up around, almost all of them, 90% of them, had all been to war. And were all my heroes, but I knew they could do some stuff.
yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
They knew some things. Watch him, Lodge.
Oh,
I've seen him do some things.
that was like the time. I probably told this story too, but one of the worst beatings I ever got, and I used that term. Not, I didn't get brutalized. I just got my butt whipped. Was when my cousin and I decided we were going to experiment with these little berries that grew out on what we used to call horse nettles. They grew along the ground, but they had little cherry looking or a little tomato looking
Yeah,
sometimes. And they were just on the ground. They just grew on the ground.
Solanum,
Something like
the
that.
little yellow ones.
Yeah, well, they turn yellow, I think.
Yeah, they're poisonous.
Well, see, one of my uncles told us, or maybe it was my meaner older cousin, told us that you could light the stem on those things and throw them, and they were just like cherry bombs, fireworks. And of course, my cousin and I wanted to find, and we went. I'm no telling how long we suffered quietly and didn't ever try that, but we always wanted to. So one day we got the opportunity, and we thought we're gonna go have us some fun with these little cherry bomb things. And so we went next door. We didn't have any matches, and we ended up going next door to my mom's aunt. I think her name was Maud, and
of course it was.
And we, of course it was. And we said wanted to borrow some matches. Well, what do you two youngins need matches for? You two young men, and who had that look about you. And we had to come up with something. And we said that we said somebody needed to burn trash or needed to smoke and didn't have any. They were out of matches. Well, that was my aunt, and she didn't smoke to begin with, but they gave us the matches, and away we went. And we ended up in the woods, and we found us a place to sit under the tree, and we ran out of that whole book of matches. It was a book of matches, not stick matches.
It wasn't like strike anywhere.
No, it wasn't strike anywhere. But we ran through the whole book and never got a single one of those things to light and blow up. So we went on about our business. I'm sure we either got on the ponies or we were gone. We eventually made our way home. Now, we didn't think we were in trouble. We didn't know anybody knew about our little sneaky endeavor. And as soon as we got home, we found out, because we got down to his house.
And they said, "Why did you need matches for?"
And then why did you tell Maud that I needed them? Because I was going to smoke. I don't smoke. And we both got sort of separated a little bit, and kind of like, well, you're going to get
you were in an interrogation.
Yeah.
Take him to that room and him to that room.
And that way we couldn't, share stories and make something new up. And both of us got our behinds tanned. And I never forgot that one. That was the lesson learned there. But we didn't even get back home before everybody in the family knew what we had done.
Oh my goodness.
That I've never forgotten that little endeavor. I don't know how old we were. Somebody,
I don't even know what we're talking about today.
Oh, we're going to talk about Memorial Day stuff a little bit because it's Memorial Day weekend. So we're not being very very reverent, but I was going to be.
I'm very reverent, even when I'm giggling.
But make my point. My point always was about that particular adventure was it really wasn't our fault because they told us it would work. They planted that seed.
It wasn't even our fault.
No, it was not deep down. It wasn't. Somebody hadn't told us that would happen, we never would have tried it. The empty pan. Please remember Sergeant David Williams, KIA, Afghanistan. Well, we'll try not to. You want to tell? I don't know who the empty pan is. Would you like to tell us anything about Sergeant Williams? We'll be glad to listen and do it respectfully. We won't sit here and laugh about anything. I'm not familiar with the empty pan, but I'd be glad to learn. But that's what we're going to talk about.
While we're at it, we'll talk about Corporal Eugene Dress, KIA, Korea, and Stephen Martin Welch, KIA in Vietnam.
Well, and we're going to talk.
We don't have to talk about them, but we need to remember them.
Well, we should do that. And I actually learned.
Welch.
I learned something just last night. I'm going to bear with me just a moment because I'm going to see if I can do something. I'll try. Yeah. I can't see you right now, and I may not be able to for a little bit, but I made some notes, and I was going to see if I could read said notes. Yeah, and I've got something I'm going to talk about just a little bit because I learned something yesterday as when I was working on this that I did not know about, but I do now. So anyway, we're going to talk about Memorial Day a little bit, and what I'm going to do, and let me pull this up because you guys can't see. I remember you guys can't see what I'm saying here. Let me see.
Speaking of napping tools,
I can do it like this. Now I can see better. I can see. Speaking of napping tools,
yeah, that dog just had another one that got from somewhere.
Well, now that dog's starting to stretch it just a little bit.
Pushing the limits might end up as food.
Strike one, strike two, strike three, and it's out.
I don't even know where you got that one, but you need to knock it off. My wife would say if I was more organized, I wouldn't lose my tools.
Yeah, my wife might say that too.
But I put them where I know where they're at, and then she helps.
Right. Yeah. But
I could have put air quotes around that. She helps. I'm like, where is this? She helped.
Well, I think for the last couple of years on Memorial Day, I usually talk about something about this topic, but I may not always have, but we're going to give it another try today. But today, what I wanted to talk about a little bit, well, I was going to ask people if they had any traditions or anything they do on Memorial Day. And I was also going to I don't think I've done this. I'm going to talk about some national cemeteries a little bit around the country. So, what I did was I picked out one from each state, if there was one in your state. And I believe everybody I picked out today had one, including you guys. You have one that was established, I believe, in 2001 or 2011 in Cheyenne. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there is a national cemetery in Cheyenne. I've got it. I'll show it to you.
Well, we go. I go to the. I used to like, especially with my grandparents. We went always and decorated always.
Decoration Day is what they used to
And
call it.
that's what we called it, was Decoration Day. And then I have been to our local cemetery several times. We have a section for veterans.
Thank you, Brenda.
That gave everything that we decorate pretty much on an annual basis.
Yeah, we did growing up. We
My
did.
family's all gone this weekend now. It's like they're in the land of greenies, actually.
In Colorado.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting you brought that up because that's what I grew up remembering. And we had Decoration Day. We went to family funeral or graveyards, not necessarily to a military cemetery or a national cemetery, but just the local. And we decorated graves. That's what they did, and that's what they call it. And yesterday, I went and I had therapy yesterday morning. I drove to the east end of town to grab a burger for take home to Brenda and bring home to Brenda. I'm home. And I passed this parking lot, and there in the parking lot were two different people had set up out of the back of their car, a la flea market type thing. They had the little racks, and they had flowers arranged, red, white, and blue, and different things arranged for sale for people to take and decorate with yesterday. It's still a big enough thing around here. My point is, it's still a big enough thing around here that people still sell flower arrangements just for that purpose.
Yeah, here too. And then they'll have, little American flags that are free. I mean, they don't charge anything for those. And so you can get a big handful of those and a bunch of flowers and go visit folks.
Well, I know, and I've got
need visiting and remembered.
Right. I think I've talked before. One of the things that I did as a Boy Scout growing up, was every year we went to Mountain Home, and they had a camperall, camporee, or whatever they called it. Boy Scouts have different names for different gatherings, and we had one there every year on the grounds, which they're very, very particular and protective of their all grassy surfaces. So it's kind of unusual that they did that, but we did. There'd be several thousand Boy Scouts there, and the big deal was on Sunday morning because it lasts like Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday. On Sunday morning, we all gathered at one end of the cemetery, National Cemetery there, and they handed us a big handful of flags, and we all walked down a row. We started down a row of headstones, basically, and we were supposed to salute, or actually, what we did was we put a flag in the ground on the proper location and facing the stone. It's on your left. That's I believe, if I remember correctly, and anyway, and then step back and salute the flag and move to the next one, all very respectfully done. And every year we did that. We put out thousands of flags. Well, people still do that, and Scouts still do that, and even Girl Scouts do it now. When I grew up, it was just Boy Scouts that I remember seeing, but I think I have a picture here of some Girl Scouts doing it just in a second. But that was something that it's stuck in my memory of something I did to honor Memorial Day, and then the worst part, only bad part about that was as we marched, as we did all that, we ended up at one end of the National Cemetery grounds. At which point they marched us down to this baseball field that was there by the thing, and we all had to sit down out in the outfield, and they gave speeches. Had some different politicians or somebody talked about, and I'm sure they were telling us something good about Memorial Day, but it was hot out there sitting in the sun, and we were all ready to move along to the next thing. But anyway, so that was a big deal, and people still do that. I'm going to use the term civilians, not because I felt like I was in the military, but scouts and things did this, organized groups. Now lots of other people I see doing it, so I'm glad it's not gone away. And I probably ought to go out there and do it again. Maybe that would be meaningful to me. So anyway, I've got a couple of pictures of that, but I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't put every national cemetery in the country in this because there'd be way too many. But we're going to talk about quite a few, or well, good many, at least what people are here. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, unless you really don't like the message, as if we have a real message. And please leave a comment. Again, 7 words or more in the comment section. Effective algorithm. What?
We have a real message.
We do. We do. It's
stuff we grew up doing and doing still. We think's cool.
I think we turned out pretty good. I think we both have good morals and
hopefully we didn't. Hopefully we didn't run Carol off earlier.
No, she'll be back. She was on the road driving somewhere. She said she'd be back.
I'd hate if that happened. It would be awful. I didn't mean to talk about dog meat like that.
It just sort of came up.
Yeah. It's just one of those days.
Well, I got something else I want to show you. I got myself a new pen the other day. Oh, look at this Pentel drawing pen. Oh man. Anyway. So thank you for being here, and I appreciate your efforts on that part. So, National Memorial Day observance is an event across the country. If you are interested in looking to see if there is a nationally sponsored event at one of the national cemeteries around, look at this website. Somebody that can, I can't do it right now. Somebody that can, if you want to cut and paste that into the if you got a blue wrench or whatever in front of your name, you can do that. You can just copy and paste that and put it in your. I thought I could do that, but it won't let me do it right now. And you can find, they've got a whole list. There's a page, and it's actually still up. And I won't say anything else about that.
So these are only national cemeteries?
These are, yeah, this is a list of national cemeteries and the things that the VA's involved in somehow, or the government, or, right. Just handing that, where they're doing flags and handing out stuff, people, marking graves. The Department of Veterans Affairs of the VA administers about 156 national cemeteries in 42 states and Puerto Rico, as well as 35 soldiers' lots, which are a little bit different, mostly just smaller, and monument sites, such as, for example, and I'll talk about this in a minute too, Confederate POW grave sites. Let's say that's kind of what they are. And so anyway, there's something going on about every state, but not every state has a federal cemetery. well, like I said, not every state has a national cemetery, but there's usually something smaller that's not on that. That's different. Not ranked at the same level as far as it's almost like a national park versus a state park. So there are things out there that aren't recognized federally that or nationally that are still relative to your state. I am quite sure that if you go below the Mason Dixon line and start looking around, you'll find out that there's a whole bunch of very recognized cemeteries, for example, that aren't on the national list that certain people, certain groups still participate in. Although I can't honestly remember if I ever saw one that had nothing but like Confederate flags, but I'm sure there's some out there. That sounds like Wolfie's had enough.
Oh my God.
You got company?
No, I just got dogs.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's
Too many. Too many. I got too many.
And another thing about this is, again, if you're here, maybe you are interested in history and that sort of stuff. You know that Mark and I both are. If you go to these websites, or most of these sites have Wikipedia sites too. There's a lot of neat information. Bear with me a second. Really good interesting to me anyway. But I'm the kid that read the encyclopedia
For fun.
And right up through high school and beyond. Anyway, so that's just a little note. And if anybody is interested and you don't get these links, let me know. Send me a text or DM me or whatever, and I'll send them to you. Okay. Now this is a picture I just wanted to open with. This is the sunrise at the Soldiers National Cemetery at Gettysburg. And that's how it's listed. It's called the Soldiers Cemetery. And I just thought that was a good picture to start with. Another interesting thing to me, I noticed things like this. Note the gravestones in this cemetery. They're different than the newer ones. So I suspect these are originals. And by that, I mean during or right after the Civil War. And the Civil War played an important role in here. I need to mention this also, because the National Cemetery, I don't say movement, but the effort to save and procure these and make sure they were protected and all that kind of got started because of the Civil War, because there was there was so much death and carnage during the Civil War that there were these huge cemeteries like Arlington that grew up out of that. And I'll mention it in a moment, but there's cemeteries out there that have over 100,000 graves in it just from the Civil War. So, it was a big deal. And a lot of it started in the South. So it did have a lot to do with the Confederacy, in honesty. But not the driving, not the main parts, but they were part of it. And there's two things that go on. There are national cemeteries that are operated by the National Park Service. There's 14 of those. And then the rest of them are by the Veterans Administration, something I got it written down here in a minute. I'll read it. That do the rest of them, like the National Cemetery, for example, at Mountain Home. That's administered by the Veterans Administration, and the rest of them are by the National Park. And sometimes they're intertwined. But these are 14 that are managed by that. And if you look through here, you notice that most of these are after the Civil War, but not all of them. For example, there is the Yorktown National Cemetery, for example. That's from the Revolutionary War period. Custer's National Cemetery had nothing to do with the Civil War. But there's another one here I wanted to bring up. I thought.
It's closed.
Yeah, and by that they're no longer accepting graves or internments there. There was one exception to that, and that's the Andersonville National Cemetery in Georgia, which is part of the historic sites where the infamous Andersonville prison was, and that cemetery is still accepting internment um, applications, both for internments, burials, and cremations. So that's an important distinction too. There are some that don't have enough room left for full body internments. Hey, John, welcome in. Surf Bum has joined us. He is in the room.
He has. That's why I was waving like this.
Oh, okay.
I should have done this like my queen wave.
Princess Mark. Brenda says, I grew up playing in the woods. I would play in the creek and catch minnows. First memories. Oh, okay. I grew up playing. She wrote that twice. What? Oh, and fire. Oh, and later fireflies.
I don't know what that had to do with Memorial Day.
I'm not sure either, but she's just talking about some of her memories, I suppose. Anyway, I think you're saying the map. That's the map of those battlefields, or those not battlefields. It's not about battlefields, although that's where a lot of them are. This is about cemeteries, and like I said, currently the National Park Service manages 14. 11 of them were transferred from the War Department to the Department of the Interior by Executive Order number 6166, 1933. Three national cemeteries were authorized or transferred after 1933. These cemeteries represent a continuum of use dating to a period before the establishment of the historical parks, of which they are integral parts thereof, such as the Yorktown Cemetery, for example. And let's see here, I made some extra notes on this. Cemeteries administered by the national park are classified as either active or closed, and we just discussed that. Active cemeteries have casket or cremation grave sites available for first interments, and that's an interesting word also, because there are other kinds of interments, like if your family member wants to be added to your grave site. That's kind of what how my parents are buried at the National Cemetery. My mother, because she was married to my dad, had my dad had the right to be buried at the National Cemetery, and along with that came the ability for mom to be buried there. And they're buried in the same gravesite, and they put one casket above the other, and then in this case, dad's name's on one side of the head marker and mom's name's on the other. When mom died first, so the stone was turned facing the grave that had her information on it. And then when dad passed away, they flipped the stone around and it has all his information on it. Like on her side, it says wife of Sergeant Don Pruitt. And of course, on the other side, it's Master Sergeant Don Pruitt thing. So anyway, Anderson National Cemetery remains the only national cemetery administered by the Park Service that is still open. And then all those others are closed. So anyway, that's how it is, and that's what's going on. Several of these are actually, I've got a couple of these that are close to me that I did not ever know about. For example, the Andrew Johnson Cemetery is one of the closed ones, and that's in Greenville. And hey there, puppy dog. Who is that?
This is Ripple. He's the new one.
Oh, hey Ripple.
He's the new one. He's another cowboy corgi.
Oh, okay, cool. So anyway, that's and I'm going to talk a little bit about. I've got some pictures of the Andrew Johnson one. I just thought it was interesting, partly because of how some of that was done. So this is the one I grew up near. This is Mountain Home National Cemetery, which is up near Johnson City, Tennessee. And there's over 17,000 internments there, which is not a lot compared to some of these. But this is the one that I put flags down in, or put flags and headstones growing up as a Boy Scout, just like these young folks are doing. And the Girl Scout, as you can see, is saluting the headstone and putting in the flag. She's got quite a handful there. And this young man over here,
who's that little jarhead?
A little jarhead, and that could just be somebody's son, or he could. I don't know if that's a scouting troop that was using those uniforms that day. I don't know.
He might be in the devil pups.
Could have been. Is that a group?
Yep.
Could be. I did not know about that. So you could have been a devil pup.
I am a devil pup.
You am a devil pup.
An official devil pup. But he may be in that. There's a group that's called the Devil Pups.
Tell us about
it. That they formed. I mean, I'm a son of a Marine, so I am a devil pup.
I assumed that's what it required.
It doesn't require it.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay.
Not to be in this organization where they help young men and women. It's kind of I don't even know what to call it. Kind of like a YMCA thing with Jungle Boots and
interesting. I did not know about that.
Utilities. It's a kind of a young men, young women organization to put them on the right path.
Well, here's an article about it. Let's see what I've got here. I had to look it up, of course. It's a youth program for American Growth Through Challenge. The Devil Pups. I'm just trying to read real quick here. Let's see. Here's their webpage. They have an interesting logo. Their logo is actually Pluto. Pluto looks to me like, which was a Disney character, and very well could be from Disney because they drew a lot of these logos and symbols in World War II. Don't know that for a fact, but that's what it looks like to me. I've looked at quite a few of them. There's a 10-day encampment each July. The camp emphasizes the development of leadership skills, physical fitness of youth between ages 14 and 17. That's I did not know about that. That's interesting.
And that young man's probably too young.
Yeah, he's probably too young.
I thought they took him in before 14, but maybe not.
Well, there could be a group that there could be more than that, what I'm reading here too. So interesting. I did not know about the Devil Pups. What's really interesting, that is, I grew up, I may never have told you this before, but I grew up always in my war game mentality and history. I always envisioned myself as a, how did I think it? As a junior Marine or as a Marine cadet kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I would have fit right into the Devil Pups. That would have been, and the Marines was the corps that I almost went into, and that came knocking on my door several times. But that's another story.
Dad ran my recruiter off.
I suspect now that my mother ran mine off too.
Staff Sergeant Zorns ran my gunner. I think he was a gunny.
Oh yeah.
Told him, "You're lying to that boy. Get your Get your backside out of this house."
Well, here's a little bit I do have about this young man.
And of course, Dad, he wasn't ever nasty.
Well, he was a Marine Corps father who didn't want you to go there.
No, he did not.
I mean, because he'd been.
And I was gone, and he was like, "You're gonna have to kill me and walk through me." And
John says, speaking of cemeteries, he was invited to Arlington. My dad's cousin passed on Easter Sunday. He's being refrigerated, I guess, until July 30th. He was 95 and a Korean War POW. POW. Oh. Star and 2 Purple Hearts. Well, that, God, what's the proper way to say that?
So I mentioned Eugene E. Dress. My grandmother's little brother killed in Korea, and he was literally killed on Heartbreak Ridge. And people were like, "Oh, was he there with Clint Eastwood?" Blah, blah. It's like I just want to hit him in the face when I hear that.
Yeah,
like,
when I first started,
he gave his life for the country, and that was the ridge he was on. Sorry.
And the Clint Eastwood movie wasn't even about Korea.
No, it was about Gitmo.
Yeah,
not Gitmo. About
I never understood. That drove me crazy because even I knew about Heartbreak Ridge growing up, and when that movie came out, I thought that's what it was going to be about, and it wasn't. So,
what was that daggone island? Grenada.
Grenada, yeah, it's about Grenada mostly.
Sort of.
Anyway, so let me tell you about this young guy. Unless you got a little bit more to add about that.
Kay was getting chased by the Navy.
Oh,
Kay, I'm sorry, but that's somewhat funny to me. I grew up with Swabbies all around me.
Well, since you're a Marine Corps kid,
and the Navy was always chasing people.
That's true. This young man over here, his name is Cooper Sanders. He was age 7 when this was taken, and he was from Gray, Tennessee. And he's putting a flag, it says, on more than 15,000 grave markers during Flag Placement Day. And they're saying it was Saturday, May 26th. This was done in 2018. I remember doing it on Sunday mornings, but they may do it now because I don't think they do the encampments there now. And that's at Mountain Home. His father was United. Here you go, Mark. Here it is, the answer right here. It says his father was a United States Marine. Let me back up. His father's United States Marine. Sanders is growing up learning from his father how to become as he's, I can't read today. Growing up learning from his father how to become a soldier and learn respect by attending events like this. There are over 15,000 flags replaced at each of the markers. I know there's over 17,000 is what they claim actually now. And this was taken for the British Herald Courier newspaper in Bristol, Tennessee. So that's who he is, and that's how he got there. The young ladies in the other picture, since I've got them in here, I might as well mention this. This is actually not this was actually not at Mountain Home, although it was included with these photographs of Mountain Home. They snuck one in on me. Now, this is actually at Los Angeles National Cemetery, where they're doing the same thing, and they placed over 88,000 flags on graves throughout this cemetery. So while I grew up thinking Mountain Home was a big place, it wasn't. It's nothing compared to something like 88,000 or 80. That's a lot. So, they put that in perspective, and that doesn't count all the internments in places like Normandy and Holland, and places where U.S. soldiers were buried overseas. It's
Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima, yeah. I think Guam may have a cemetery too. If it's not Guam, it's one of the other islands. But yeah, and I think in South Korea,
a lot of boys in there. And the cool thing about South Korea is their children still to this day go out there and groom that cemetery with scissors.
Yeah.
And it's it's to perfection. It's the most gorgeous lawn you would ever even think about. And they're so appreciative of Americans' involvement. I just think it's amazing how they still, to this day, little kids are like out there cutting the grass on that cemetery with scissors. And I mean, and that's a commitment. I mean, that's like a big deal. And they're cutting that grass with scissors, and that's why they're, pretty tight with the U.S. They're
Well, and you go to Europe, and I won't go into politics of all the things that might or may
it
not.
don't need to be no politics mentioned at all in any of this.
No, but it's starting to affect it is why it bothers me. But I'm not going to go there anymore. Anyway, if you go to the young lady who I follow that I've talked about, maybe not here, but on Facebook, that goes by the name Itchy Boots, which is a reference to, itchy feet traveling, wanting to travel. When during COVID, she was not able to travel worldwide for a while, so she was traveling around her native land, which is the Netherlands. And she went to a couple of really large American cemeteries in the Netherlands and told the story just like you're telling in Korea. The same thing over there. They still tend and manicure the grounds of all these U.S. soldiers' graves because of the same reason. They still remember and understand what America's role was there, and they're very respectful of that, and they take better care of them in some cases than we do, probably.
They do that in the Netherlands and in Belgium and in France.
Diana, good luck on that, and you're gonna have to fill us in. We've missed you. I've been wondering where you guys were. And I know I'm saying this, but I'm throwing this in there because I know this has to do with Alexander.
Going to the armory.
Cadets. Yeah, well, he's in the cadets, the air cadets.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
I think we've shown some pictures of him on here doing ceremonies and such. And I think he's been away to camp or maybe even they have. I'm not sure how that worked. But I didn't know that till last night. And Brenda reminded me. Well, I may have known it, but I forgot. But anyway, maybe we can talk about that, Dinah, when you guys get back home, settle down, and we can. I'd like to know more about it. Anyway, but yeah, worldwide, it's amazing that people over there remember. Okay, let's just put it that way. Okay, next slide, please. And this is one I brought this one up because at Mountain Home, there are actually 4 Medal of Honor winners that are buried at Mountain Home. 3 of them are Civil War veterans. In fact, I'm not sure if it was one. It might have been the first Civil War veteran. I'm not sure about that. He was with the 54th Ohio, Mark. His name was Private Henry G. Berman, excuse me.
That won the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Yeah, and there's 4 buried there. 3 of them were Civil War veterans, which is when the Congressional Medal of Honor, the Medal of Honor. I've always called it the Congressional Medal of Honor. The reason it got that name was Congress used to have to vote on it to award it, but technically it's not. That's not the name technically, but that's what people use, and that's okay. But I didn't know that till reading about it. The last guy though was I think he was in a different. I can't remember which war where he got his Medal of Honor. Maybe it's not on that card, and I may not have put it in there. Spurrier. Oh, his name was Spurrier. I forgot that. He served in. I know. I did want to say something about this. Dang it! I didn't put all the notes in. Spurrier was the only Medal of Honor winner who served with the 131st Infantry from World War II. And his story online is fascinating. If you're interested in all in that sort of thing, I really recommend you go read about Sergeant Junior James Spurrier, because he was, they literally referred to him as a one-man army because they were moving in to take a town this was after D-Day. And he literally helped clean out the whole town almost by himself. And it's quite the story. And oh, well, I do have it here. This is a bigger image of that, what I was just reading. I forgot that was a coming up slide. I've got to remember that. I'm doing this different today.
Fourth Ohio.
Yeah. Well, he was with the three Civil War veterans that are buried at Mountain Home that were.
So what did he?
All that. Anyway, I'm got confused.
Did he get? Was that awarded posthumously?
Which one?
The
Civil War.
Herman that was with the 54th Ohio.
Yes, I believe it was. And
I just wondered if he got killed at Chickamauga or somewhere. He was in the Western campaign.
No, actually, I think he died at Vicksburg.
Oh, he died at Vicksburg.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And they took him clear to Mountain Home.
Yeah, and I read a little bit more about these. I apologize for my getting them confused a little bit here. But yeah, I think he died. In fact, all three of those guys may have. I'm not sure. Spurrier didn't die in World War II, and he's buried at Mountain Home. He's an interesting story also, a little different than some of the others. He was a hero during World War II. He came out. He tried to become a musician, I believe, and that didn't work out. So he rejoined the Army. And don't know if he was there until Korea. He may have mustered out after Korea. Went back to civilian life, where after reading his life story, sounds to me like he suffered greatly from PTSD, but they didn't call it that back then. And he eventually got himself back on the straight, better path. And when he passed away, he lived they said he lived in a sort of a isolated cabin somewhere in the mountains around Johnson City.
Really?
Yeah. I thought, I don't have all that down there. He was discharged. 45. He was discharged. Oh no, he was playing baseball. Yes, he was just discharged in 1945. He tried to play professional baseball and it didn't work out. So he rejoined in 47. But was given a general discharge in 51. Oh, he said he deserted in Korea. There's more to that story, I know. And then he had a lot of trouble adjusting to civilian life, more than likely suffering PTSD. Alcohol had a hold of him real bad, and that gave him a lot of trouble. He became a teetotaler later, started a radio television repair shop, and retired to a cabin in Tennessee.
Sounds like the gentleman we know by the name of York.
Yeah, kinda.
He had the same journey at the end.
Yeah. The another interesting side note: Spurrier's medals and awards were lost, which happens a lot, especially when these guys fall on hard times. I've read a lot of stories about that. They hawk them, or people steal them, or they lose them. Various things, and that happened with Sergeant Spurrier. But his were found in a safe locked up in 2011. He died in 84. His Medal of Honor and some other medals that he won were in there in that safe. How they got there, I don't think they know, or where somebody may have taken them and was holding them for him just so they wouldn't be lost, forever. And they were awarded to one of his two surviving sisters, or to both of them. I don't know which one ended up taking them, but he had two sisters still alive. Anyway, just another interesting story about a gentleman who's buried. Now I put that pic. Oh, you hadn't seen this picture yet. Now I have another attachment to this. Obviously, Mountain Home was important to me because both my parents are buried there, and Brenda's father is interned at Mountain Home, and her mother, I believe, is going to be also. Hey, welcome in, Carol. We're kind of glad you missed the talk part where we were talking about eating dogs and stuff.
She was there during that.
Well, was she in the car? Okay.
She was commenting on it during that.
Oh,
That's
okay.
how
Yeah.
I ran her off, and I didn't mean to do that at all.
Man, I don't think
I would never have done that.
she's tough. Anyway, my uncle, Clarence Sensabaugh, private U.S. Army, served. He joined up and served in two wars. World War II, he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and then Korea. He had mustered out after World War II. He rejoined when Korea started and went over there and served. I don't know what battles he was involved in, although I'm almost sure he was with the Army group who was involved with the Frozen Chosen Reservoir campaign or battles.
So he was on the
He was on the other side. That was he was the group that trapped it. I think the Marines were trying to save. Maybe.
No, I mean you listen to those guys like, yeah, they don't even talk about us at all. You know, they were on the east side of the reservoir,
right.
And the Marines were on the west side of the reservoir, and it was ugly. In both places, it was bad.
It was bad.
Those guys ended up like walking across. They ended up out on the ice on the stupid reservoir.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And walking, to the south where the big camp was at. Yeah, it was bad.
Anyway, that was you don't hear much about the Army side of that.
They're all bitter.
No, I don't doubt that. I can kind of understand that.
You listen to those guys. I've got a DVD. I think it's called The Frozen Chosen, and it talks about all the units involved, Marines and Army. And the Army, they got sent up on the east side because it wasn't going to be. They didn't think the Chinese would come in from that way.
And they did.
Well, some of them did, and it got pretty ugly for those guys. And they had to fight their way all the way back out, but it wasn't no cakewalk on the west side either.
No. And I would never.
That's where the big waves were hitting. And
I would never want to somehow disparage the Marine Corps side of that because
it was awful.
It is, but it is a shame at the same time that the Army side kind of got pushed aside because
they just didn't get talked about.
That's what I mean. It just kind of fell by the wayside, and because if you don't talk about it, and if people don't talk about it, we forget, and that's what happens. Anyway,
which is why we do decoration and
exactly. Now, my Uncle Afton, as I knew him, I never knew him as Clarence. That was his given name, but everybody called him Afton. He's buried in one of I don't know exactly which stone this is, but I've been there. I've looked at it, and if you get a map of the cemetery, all these cemeteries have this kind of system. It'll tell you where to go, what section they're marked, like section LL 0677, row 0, and it's plot number 677. And he passed away in 1995 and is buried there at Mountain Home. Brenda's grandmother, grandfather is also buried there. Her dad's dad. I don't know for sure that my uncle was at Chosen Reservoir, but I think he might have been. But I never got to talk to him about that. He never talked about it much. So, like all of them, and none of these guys talk about that stuff usually. And but I wish in his later in life, I think he would have, and I was not thinking the way I do today, where I wish I had written it all down because nobody did. And in fact, he got my cousins who I hung around with growing as a younger child impressed on me that my Uncle Afton was nothing but a drunk. And they even told one of my cousins, one of the side of the family, even used to say he got kicked out of the army, a dishonorable discharge for drinking or something. But none of that's true. He was discharged twice honorably, and he fought in 2 damn wars. I mean, come on. And they never get, and I didn't realize that. Mom did. Mom knew, but Mom didn't.
How dare you say that about that man?
Yeah, if I had known better today and I could do that, I would tell them all that. Damn them, because that's not true. Anyway.
So I have 2 questions. I'm putting up my hand. I have 2 questions.
Hang on, one more thing. He tried
to you don't get to take off again.
Go ahead. I wasn't going to take off. It was a short run. Go ahead.
Uncle Aspen?
Afton, Afton.
Oh, Afton.
Yeah, my mouth's dry. You can't understand me, but
well, that's even weirder because that's like the town northwest of me in my same county, Afton, Wyoming.
Oh yeah, okay.
Afton. That's even weirder. I was asking if you were saying Aspen.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Like the tree. And the second question, is he one of the 2 that blew the end of the stadium out?
No, he was the oldest brother. They were his brothers. They were younger than him.
Okay, just wondered.
But same family, same group.
Same group. I knew they were sensibles.
Well, the only other thing I was going to say about him was he served in 2 wars, and then he tried to sign up for Vietnam. And at that point, the Army said, "No, we've got a lot of young guys to fight this one. You're okay," because he was, I don't know what age he was by then. Well, he was born in 21, so 61. Well, he was only 40, but at that point they said, "No, we're okay. You don't, we will call you if we need you." And but he tried to go to Vietnam. He signed up to volunteer to go to Vietnam.
There's a lot of fellows that fought from World War II to Vietnam. All the way through the whole, deal.
Don't think about it, but that's only
Korea, Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so what you're saying here is that you have like an affinity for this lifestyle.
Kay's grandfather is buried in Arlington. Wow.
That's a pretty big honor.
Okay, so moving on to the next one is local that I did not know about.
And it was a dishonor to a specific person from the South.
Yeah, it was all.
They put him there just to like
spite Lee.
Spite him. Yep.
This is the other one I didn't know about, and this was in Greenville, and this is the Andrew Johnson National Cemetery. Now, it doesn't have as many soldiers in it. It's a small cemetery, but it's got some Civil War history tied to it.
I've been to this spot.
Have you?
Yeah, I recognize that.
Well, you may have.
That and big old red brick building. I've been to this site.
Well, the hill it's on was also known as Signal Hill. Yeah. Because during the Civil War, they used it for semaphore. They communicated that way. And it was high enough in the area where it's at there that it was above the little valley. You could see the railroad system, so they were able to monitor things from below. Anyway, Andrew Johnson, who was the president who took over after Lincoln was assassinated, who is greatly disparaged in history. I mean, he did some good things right, but at the time, people didn't like him because I think he tended to be a bit corruptible in the sense that he did things for friends that maybe he shouldn't have done. History has a different view of all that. And he tried to continue with Reconstruction. So, I mean, it was a whole mixed up thing. But anyway, he'd not looked down upon as a great president, but he was president nonetheless. And he lived in Greenville. they erected this monument in part because, or this graveyard happened in part because of two of his sons, and I'm going to show their headstones. His two sons, Robert Johnson and Charles Johnson, both died during the Civil War, or died shortly. If they didn't die, they were wounded and they died shortly after.
They were both soldiers.
Yes, they were both soldiers. Okay. One was a cavalry officer or cavalry. Yeah, he was a colonel, and the other one was a surgeon. And I don't know if it didn't say who he was assigned to, but they both. So I guess he didn't technically fight in the war, but he was a participant in the war. He certainly did.
He saw too much stuff, is what he saw.
Exactly. And then Andrew Frank Johnson, I don't know if I can remember seeing. That's Andrew Johnson Jr.
So yet another East Tennessean that fought for the Union.
Fought for the Union. That's why one reason I included this.
Another two officers that fought for the Union in East Tennessee.
And the third, actually, let me see. I think the third one, his son Andrew Jr. Let me see what he did.
Andrew Frank Johnson Jr. He's got a big old monument there.
Yeah, but it doesn't mention he died early. He was only 26. And his marker reads, "To the memory of my husband." It was put there by his wife, who obviously was young also when he passed away. He worked in a cotton mill early on, and from that, I think maybe part of that, he developed tuberculosis, or at least what they thought was that could have been cotton lung or whatever they call it now, all that lint and stuff. I know that was a problem for people that worked in places like that. Anyway, and then this is also on that Monument Hill Cemetery. This is one of the closed ones I mentioned earlier that's no longer active. I love this quote, though, down here at the bottom by him. He said, "I want no more honorable winding sheet than that of a brave old flag, and no more glorious grave than to be interred in the tomb of the Union." I thought that was interesting. In the tomb of the Union. So he really wasn't, he may not have been asking for all he got here, but it's a small little cemetery, and maybe that is why they did it here, to show people, look, we were with the Union, and we're not ashamed of it. Okay, the last.
So Kay has I'm trying to figure out. So I guess was supposed to be in the military or married into it. Explain. Do some explaining there, Kay.
There was a lot of military, maybe in her family, like her grandfather who's at Arlington.
Yeah,
I'd like to know that story a little bit. I'd like to know a little bit more about him, Kay, if you know anything.
Didn't have to be married into it, but they're the bravest of the brave.
Yeah.
Believe me, I grew up with them women telling me what to do. They're the ones that have to put up with all the BS.
Yeah, I mean, your mom's an example of
my little bitty 4'10" mom, like, certainly had to take care of the home fires, keep everything going, and then put up with the PTSD dad when he got home.
Yeah, and your dad was over. He did 2 tours in Vietnam.
He did 2 tours, and the only reason he got out was he promised Mom she wouldn't have to raise us kids by herself.
The widow.
Yeah.
And he was already got his orders.
Like, if I make it through this tour, I'll get out. And he had zero intention to do that before that. It was his career. And he's like, if I make it through this one, I'll get out. I promise. And he did. Where'd you go?
I'm back. I'll be right back. I had something in my mouth. I was going to.
Thought you was maybe stepping out back.
I'm here.
Out back to leave a leak.
No. So anyway,
Everybody says take a leak, but you're really leaving it.
really leave it. Anyway, so I got one more that has a personal attachment, and I did not know this story at all until yesterday. I don't know much about my grandfather. My mom, uncles, nor my aunt spoke about him. Huh? Interesting, Kay. You should. Well, I mean, you could look him up. Send me his name, and if I'm looking up stuff, maybe I can. Maybe I can find out something about
Maybe
it.
you can hunt him up.
Yeah, I've got some military record stuff, or at least we're trying to get into some. Maybe once I figure all that out, maybe I can find out something.
That's quite the web.
Yeah, I can't get in it. I mean, I'm struggling.
The problem with a lot of that stuff, like a lot of my relatives that were serving early in the 20th century. No, is that right? Yeah, 1900s. Yeah. So the fellows that were serving in World War One and Two, even my grandfather in World War Two, I have some records, but all their records for that group of guys, from if you were within a couple 100 miles, 300 miles of the Mississippi on either side, all of your records got stored in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah.
And that place burned.
That's why I'm having trouble, I think.
So your dad
and my uncles.
And your uncles would be probably difficult to find their records because of that, where they were stored at the time, and that the fact that whole military record storage facility burned to the ground.
Yeah. And everything was paper back then.
Everything was paper.
So let me get through this guy, and then I'll move on. We can talk about that a little bit more. I didn't know that. I've never heard a story about this gentleman, which is a shame.
Is that your uncle?
He would be my uncle, my mom, or my second uncle, maybe, if there is such a thing.
Your mom's uncle?
Yeah, my mom's uncle.
And your great uncle then.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, that's right. His name was William Sensabaugh.
And he was killed at Anzio.
And he was killed on the beach at Anzio. When I learned this, it's my intention this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, to go visit his grave. Now, he's buried at a small local cemetery just up the road from me.
He's in Rogersville.
He's in closer to Seguinsville, but yeah, basically. And there's a little bit of stuff. I put a little bit of the story here about him that I found online, and he went over. He left. He went to Europe in 43, and died in 44. Doing, I'm sure, amphibious assault on the beach, just like they did there, because that happened before. Yeah, that happened before.
That happened before D-Day.
So these landings were almost a forerunner, and they learned some things from it.
He was 20 years old.
Yeah, and he's buried at a place called Fudge's Chapel United Methodist Church Cemetery, which I'm going to go find that today. I know where it is. It's just up the highway, literally. But I never knew about this young man until yesterday. He was the son of John Sensabaugh, who I grew up knowing, and my mother, and everybody talked about Uncle John all the time. My grandmother and my mother grew up on a side road of Sensabaugh Hollow and Sensabaugh Road. John lived on Sensabaugh Road in Sensabaugh Hollow. So this young man was born and raised probably on the property, literally born there. And I'm going to go find out more about him. Again, this is some of the stuff that I just didn't learn before everybody was gone. But I read this yesterday, and if I can find one, I'd like to put a flag on his grave. I don't know if I can find a small one in time to do that, but I'm going to do it if I can. it interesting too. I was reading this little piece of paper here that I attached is an actual clipping from the Rogersville newspaper. I mean, he would have been, well, he was from his mom and everybody's address that lived in that area was Church Hill. Now they don't really live in Church Hill, but it's just like, you guys were probably Jonesboro. You live outside the city limits, but your address or whatever limits they had is a small town. But anyway, that's why, and Rogersville, like I said, it's just up the road here just a little bit. And interesting, even back then, though, I thought this was, because I don't know anything about these people. His sister, who survived him, this is, I guess you could call this an obit, or sort of an obit. His sister lived in San Diego, California. I'd like to know how she got out there, because as my cousin said, the best thing that ever happened to me and you was our mamas got out of the holler. Well, our mamas got out of the holler, but they just moved, to town.
They just went to another holler just close by.
Yeah, more or less. This young lady ended up in California in 1940 something or 2030 something. I'd like to know.
I wonder if she married a Navy man or a JAR.
That's exactly what I wonder. That's exactly because that's how Brenda was born out there. Brenda was born in La Jolla, which is just right outside San Diego, because that's where her father was as a Navy officer, or not officer, but a sailor. And I just wonder if that's not. I thought the exact same thing.
Mom and I, and then later Lisa and Mom and I lived in San Diego or outside of San Diego.
Was
Dad was in the Marine Corps, and he was deploying to Vietnam, and so we did 2 tours, and that's why we lived out there.
And that's why I wonder if that's how she got out there. I'd like to know more about that part of the family. I don't know much about it.
It's a weird place to go if you I'm just like gonna go live in San Diego, California. It would have been. Maybe she worked for the zoo.
Maybe.
I mean, weirder things have happened. I bet she was married up to a Department of the Navy personnel, either Navy or Marine Corps.
That's what I wonder too. Was Lisa born in California?
No, we were both born at Millington Naval Air Station.
Wonder why he kept getting. How come he had time there? What was going on in Millington that he was stationed there?
That's just was his like home duty station was in Millington. I don't know why.
Well, anyway,
I don't know why we ended up there.
One of the things that I've been talking about since I've been here, and this is part of the reason why I moved back here. Brenda also, maybe not for exact same reasons, but family is in Rogersville is the capital of Hawkins County, I guess county seat, and was one of the first towns in Tennessee after Jonesboro. After Jonesboro.
Yeah.
And Davy Crockett's his uncle settled this place.
Right.
There's an archive right in town here, 4 miles from here. And I went by there this week because we keep saying we need to go in there and study up on some things. And I went by there the other day just to see what the hours, when they're open and that kind of stuff. So they're only open part-time, and I think it's only by appointment. I gotta call them and find out.
Probably they'll have you running the place before you know it. You just need to go over there.
Well, that's true. I do. That's a good point. Maybe I can help them out. I'd love to. Lord God, I'd love to get into that stuff. And I know how to read deeds and things like that.
I'm sure they'd welcome your assistance.
Anyway, that's one of my relatives that died at Anzio. So in honor of him and Memorial Day on this Memorial Day weekend, I wanted to mention him. And like I said, I didn't know him. I met him yesterday, literally. So now this will go a little quicker. and we can just chit chat. Anybody has comments or knows has somebody if this rings a bell, then by all means. And I have some interesting notes though about a few of them. I tried to remember the states that everybody lives in. I did that a couple weeks ago, and I missed a couple, like John. So John, I apologize, but I got you today, buddy. So I tried to pick the states of my regular visitors, and this one is in California. Michelle may not be here today, but if she paused to pop in, here's a story about them. This is outside San Francisco. I thought this was really kind of cool a picture because you can see the Golden Gate Bridge in the back. And I guess I could say this is also for Brenda in a way. And Brenda's been there. She's actually been to the Golden Gate Bridge. I haven't. She has an uncle that still lives in that area. And there are 12 national cemeteries in California. And I tried to put the number because there's more in some states than others, and I couldn't do each one of them. So I just picked one, and I tried to pick one that might be in from a part of the state where somebody may have lived or grown up. So I picked this one. Kay, I don't know if I got close to you. I tried, sort of. I mean, I just had to pick. Same for everybody. If you're in here, then I've tried to get one close to you. And of course, there's a couple of people who've since joined us that I don't have, but maybe next time. So anyway, there's 12 in California, and this one's in San Francisco, and it's called the San Francisco National Cemetery.
Is that at the Presidio?
Well, that's what I was just thinking. I'm glad you said that because I was just thinking that I believe this view is from that area. I've seen enough movies and pictures from or around Presidio that I think it probably is, but it didn't say that. At least I didn't dig that up in my research this week. Mostly yesterday and Thursday part time. So yeah, it may be, but I'm not sure. And I didn't put a lot of extra. I put notes in some of the others. This one I should have mentioned because there's a couple of these cemeteries that are in California that are literally huge, and I mean 100,000 plus graves. And this may be one of those. I didn't get the numbers on this one. They didn't all the little bits of information didn't have all the same info each time. This is Pikes Peak National Cemetery, and probably one of the newer ones. Actually, it's not that old. I'm remiss that this one I didn't put when it was created. I should have. But this picture is actually an artist rendering of it, and I liked it better than the pictures I did see. So I included it. Shows the front gate area and all the. If you've ever been to a national cemetery, or if you've ever walked by one or driven by one, you can almost immediately tell that it is that military and/or national, because all the headstones are the same, and they're all lined up in perfectly aligned rows. And it is striking. I think would be a good word for it, and it immediately you can just tell.
I would love to go to the cemetery in France.
Oh, me too. Yeah, me too.
I wouldn't be able to take it, but I'd love to go there. It'd be hard to walk through all that.
Yeah, it would. I can't imagine that. I just don't know how anybody would do that and not be moved.
But it's so perfect.
Yeah.
That what they did. I mean, it's just so perfect.
And over there, and of course, it was done. I'm sure the U.S. had involvement in it, but it was, over there they use different headstones than they do here. All the headstones here are basic. They have a certain shape and size, and how they're.
Yeah, they used like what your religion was.
Yeah, they got more specific. They use crosses or stars of David, and it's interesting if you see the pictures. But I can't imagine that wouldn't be moving. And like I said, my uncle Afton fought there. He he landed after D-Day, but he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. So I mean, and he wasn't killed over there, but it would still be.
Well, but your great uncle was.
Huh?
Your great uncle was killed over.
Yeah, my great uncle certainly was. And I mean, for somebody like me and you,
is he in Anzio?
Huh?
Did they bury him in Italy?
No, they brought him back. That was the other thing. I actually meant to mention that, and I got ahead of myself. Let me see if I can back up one.
Well, you don't have to do that.
The very first thing in this article, and I thought, again, to me, this was interesting. It says the body of Private William L. Sensabaugh, 28 or 23, I can't read that, and who was killed on January.
He was only 20.
At Anzio Beach will arrive in Bulls Gap at 5:22 p.m. Saturday. So he came in by train.
Got it.
And most of the time when they brought a body in during that time period, they were flag draped, and there was a bit of a ceremony right from the get go. They didn't just throw them off in the luggage bin. Anyway, I meant to mention that. Okay, so
I don't know how many folks are on here, but if you ever want to like watch a movie and just bawl your eyes out, watch a movie called Taking Chance.
Taking Chance.
Which was about a young Marine that was killed in that. I think they were in Afghanistan. Well, maybe they were in Iraq. They were in the sandbox somewhere. I think it was Iraq. And he was a young man from DuBois, Wyoming that had but he joined the Marine Corps, and his parents had divorced, and he was living in northern Colorado, and he joined the Marine Corps in northern Colorado. And the colonel was looking at like casualty lists one day and saw this kid from his hometown. Turns out he wasn't from his hometown, and he was from Wyoming, not from Colorado. But the colonel brought him home, and like what that whole process is.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like, going from wherever to Dover to like getting on an airplane with the body and bringing them home and doing all the honors along the way.
John,
that's a tough one to watch. John's seen it, Taking Chance.
Yes, Brenda, I know there's a cemetery in Straw Plains, and I don't know if that one isn't on my list for some reason. So I don't know if that's because it's being operated by another group or if it just hasn't made the list. But yeah, great movie, Kevin Bacon. Everyone should see that movie. All right, John, well, both of you guys.
It's the best role Kevin Bacon ever did in his life, by far, like 1,000%. And he played a Marine Corps colonel perfectly, maybe lieutenant colonel, perfectly, and best. Yeah.
And in case you don't know,
I saw this growing up as a child pretty regularly, and so that one can really. That can make me start bawling like a little baby.
John said bring lots of tissue.
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't know, if you are here, if you're watching this in replay, I mean, when I don't know how all the services do that, but there are, at least in some cases, where bodies are brought back by individuals and they literally stay with that body until
they all do it the same.
But do they all do it for every person? I've never really understood.
Every human being gets an escort back to their hometown, wherever they're going to be interred. And it's a big deal.
It's a big
they showed in this movie like army troops coming home and other services coming home, and of course Chance was a Marine, but which made it harder for me to watch. But it's yeah, as John said, you better have a box of Kleenex with you.
Those kind of movies.
My two office managers asked me what they said. They were going to have like a girls' weekend, and like we're just going to have crying movies.
Oh Lord!
And I'm like, I'll give you one, and I gave them that movie. I was like, here, watch my copy. and they came in after the weekend. They're like, "You're awful. That was we bawled so hard."
Well, you asked for a crying movie.
I'm like, you wanted a crying movie? I'll give you a crying. Here, watch Old Yeller and Taking Chance.
Yeah, I dare you not to cry with Old Yeller.
If you don't cry,
you ain't got a heart.
You ain't got a heart.
Oh man,
my wife's like, I'm like, let's watch Old Yeller, and she's like, don't you even think about it.
But it's only one section.
It's still, she's like, don't. I'm like, okay, we'll watch Savage Sam instead. The dog doesn't die.
Yeah.
And so she's watched Savage Sam with me, Old Yeller's boy, who somehow he came out of a yellow lab looking thing and became a blue tick coonhound. I'm still not sure about that.
No, I don't know how that works. Okay, Kay's gonna look it up. I think.
Kay, be careful. It's a great movie, but just have the tissues.
I'm such an empath. Over the years, I've realized this, and I struggle so much with movies like that. It's hard for me to watch.
I like that word.
Empath?
An empath.
Well, it means
you have empathy
for stronger maybe than a lot of. It's almost like I think some empaths, and I'm not saying I'm like this, but some empaths just literally take on someone else's sorrows or their problems or their issues, and I really feel strong emotions towards other people. In a story like this, I'm like, oh my God, this might as well be my uncle or my brother. I mean, it's tough. That's not professionally diagnosed. I just believe that I am that. Brendan probably might believe that. Kay says the movie is on Max. If you've got that. Okay, which used to be what?
It's also in here on my shelf on a DVD.
Well, I ain't gonna. Next time I come out,
you just have to send me an address so I can forward it. I actually have it on my tablet too.
I don't know if I want to watch that with you sitting there beside me or not. I might.
No, that ain't ever going to happen, brother.
That ain't never going
to happen.
Okay.
I don't think I've watched that movie with another human being ever.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha.
It's just too close. And anyway.
And then the next one I went to.
I know some of the people involved from the Du Bois country, and anyway.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's a true story.
I'm never gonna sit down with a group of humans or even another person and watch that movie.
So the story you're telling is true story then?
Yeah, it's a true story.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that part.
No, it's every bit of it's factual. I would love to have that officer come to my house. I'd feed him breakfast and take him fishing and whatever.
Get him up there on Saturday morning, and we'll talk to him on the show.
Yeah, it was.
And we don't have to get. I mean, I'd love to meet somebody like that. Not necessarily.
He's a tough old Marine officer, you know that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Did
it'd be difficult.
Have you met him?
I have not. I would love to, but I have not. Anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack us
That's
again.
keep that thought in mind, because
I
in a minute I'm
squirreled you again.
no, that's okay, because I want to. That's why I'm doing this today. It's all about heroes, in essence. Florida, I had to pick out another one. I thought you'd appreciate this one, but this is the U.S. Marine Guard of the Navy Yard Monument in Barrancas National Cemetery, Pensacola, Florida. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but that's how I think it might be pronounced. If anybody else knows better, I don't know if you can spell it out for me a different way. There are 10 national cemeteries in Florida. I don't know why, but that surprised me a little bit. But then again, it shouldn't. There's all kinds of military bases and stuff all over Florida, especially naval and used to be Air Force. I don't know if there's that many Army bases anymore, but there used to be. Back when the Army was the Air Force was part of the Army, there was quite a bit of activity. Anyway, I thought this was interesting. The U.S. Marine Guard of the Navy Yard Monument. That's what it's actually called. So I put all that in there, even though it's a little bit of a tongue twister. But that's it. That obelisk is guarding a part of the Navy Yard there still today. U.S. Marines. In Georgia, I just picked one that was in Canton, Georgia, which is between us and Atlanta, thereabouts in the mountain area of Georgia. And there are 2 national cemeteries in Georgia. And I put in this one, not that that's not counting any Confederate cemeteries. And let me explain that a little bit. In the South, I know there are Confederate cemeteries for whatever reason, whether it's battlefield cemeteries, some are mass graves. Of course, there's some Union mass graves also. Or I lost my train of thought there for a minute. Anyway, but they're not all national cemeteries for obvious reasons. But there are some Confederate cemeteries attached to some of the ones in my list. But there are cemeteries that are recognized by local Daughters of the Confederacy and various things in the South that are recognized, or at least are. Gee, I can't even think of the right words to say, because I have really mixed feelings about that. I'm one of those people who believes that the Confederacy, despite everything I was taught as a child, were traitors to the Union. I don't know what else to say about that. But anyway, so there might be a lot more of those in Georgia that I don't know about. And I didn't go deep enough into that. I didn't try to dig into that. But I know there's some. I know where there's one in Chattanooga that I've been to, just happened to walk upon it. One day, Phil and I were riding motorcycles, and we walked outside the motorcycle. We stopped at a motorcycle shop, I think, to get warm. I think we were in the middle of a thunderstorm, and we stopped to rest or dry off. And lo and behold, there was a small Confederate cemetery just right there. Didn't know it was there. Driven by it dozens of times. Anyway, this one's not. This is a big one. There is the one I chose for Hawaii in honor of Elaine was the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, which is in Honolulu. Actually, the description of it, if you look it up, says it's in the extinct volcano there near Honolulu. This one's kind of interesting too, and this is something, Mark, I didn't. Maybe you know more about. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're like me, and this is a surprise. But this one has. What are you reading?
Are you reading nothing? I was surprised.
Well, I was.
No, and I probably will be too.
So let me try to read this, and because it'll be a better description than I can give. On either side of this grand staircase that you see here on my right picture, there are what they call 8 courts. So kind of like 8 courtyards, little boxed in areas of the missing, on which are inscribed the names of the 18,095 American World War II veterans that are still missing from the Pacific. 18,000
500.
MIA, basically, that are still there.
In the jungle.
I mean, we're never. I mean, I just thought that was a huge number to me.
I mean, if you listen to if you read like Eugene Sledge,
Yeah,
or Robert Leckie, the guys that were island hopping and going through absolute unbelievable horrors, in my opinion.
no,
I consider the European. I'm sure the European theater was awful, like beyond belief awful, but the Pacific was even awfuler.
I think in many
Yeah,
ways,
you're fighting an enemy that, like, I'm not giving you any quarter, and you're going to have to kill all of us. I mean, which is why they dropped the darn bombs on Japan.
Yeah,
Was like, okay, we're going to lose a gazillion Marines on that island, or on those islands, the home islands. Anyway, Eugene Sledge and guys like that talked about guys just like being vaporized. Like,
yeah, and those guys
how do you bring a guy home that's like, an eighth of an inch is as big a piece as you can find of him?
it's hard for us to imagine that.
It's just, and
I
I'm sure the same stuff was happening in Europe. If some of the more famous, like the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment guys, Band of Brothers, shells landing in foxholes, and like, they're just gone.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there, they're still there, but in teeny tiny pieces. So
I think that's a good point, and that's exactly. I'm sure that's. I mean,
yeah.
I just finished reading the Ghost Soldiers and watching the movie again, where they went into Katababon, or whatever how you say that name of that prison camp in the Philippines, and as part of that story, they talked about one of the other POW camps where the Japanese,
They just burned them.
They burned them, and they just threw them. They got them inside these.
They ran them down in a ditch and set the whole thing aflame with incendiaries.
And those are people that are never.
They were gone.
Yeah, they're just gone, and that's just so hard to. I think I guess I don't know if you've been, even if you've been there. I think that's probably still hard to wrap your head around. That's why people have trouble with things like that when they come home. I mean, I just can't. Yeah, but that number just surprised me, because it's just. I grew up hearing about and knowing people who knew people who were MIA from Vietnam, for example.
Yeah.
But that number is only. Not only, please don't think I'm making a lot of 2,500. I think Americans are still missing from Vietnam, or at least they were when this is built. And I don't know how they handle this. If they find them, I'm sure they take the names off. But there is a Vietnam area. There's a Korean area here where there's 8,200 American names that are missing from the Korean War still. And the 2,500 that were missing from the in Vietnam at the time this was built, at least. And I thought that 2,500 was a god awful number, but then you start reading these World War II numbers and that sort of thing, and it's It's just unbelievable. And if you ever watch the movie, going back to a good but tough movie, not as tough maybe as the other one, The Lost Brigade, which was a World War One story.
Yeah, that's a tough one too.
Yeah, and if you watch that movie, the guy that was in charge and played by Ricky Schroeder in this case, which was hard to believe at first.
He killed himself.
Yeah, after he came, yeah, I and I didn't know that at the time, but I had forgotten.
Yeah, he committed suicide like several years after the
Yeah,
deal.
but one of the big things they made a point of showing in that movie was he was trying so hard to collect the dog tags off these guys
Right.
and and keep them. And in the movie, they make a big deal out of him handing this bundle of dog tags that he had say because those guys were gone. And in this case, if someone like him had not done that, those would be missing soldiers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were. I think in the movie they depicted a couple who were, like you said, vaporized. And those guys were gone, and those dog tags got blown to hell and back. I mean, they could have been anywhere, maybe never found, likely never found.
What's his name? Edelsey? I can't remember. Colonel. He was a colonel, I think.
Colonel,
Or
and he
major. He was a major, I think.
major.
I think it was Edelsey.
Say
Anyway, that was that's a
but that
that's
again.
kind of tough to watch that flick too.
So anyway, there's a lot of representation of that here.
I'm going full on cartoon mode, man. I just watch like Scooby Doo and things, and
I get it. I get that. Brenda would probably tell you I'm kind of like that. I'd say I have a real struggle with that.
Me and the kids sat down and watched Winnie the Pooh the other night and had a grand night. It was great.
Good for you.
And we sang the songs and we did all that. And yeah.
Well, I would watch that with you.
It's good for your soul.
It is. You need
that. Robin.
I could watch that one with you, I'm sure.
We could watch that one together. Neither one of us would cry a bit. We'd just laugh.
Anyway, it's tough. It's tough when you when you see numbers.
So what do they consider the Arizona in Hawaii? Do they consider that a National Cemetery?
I don't think it's listed as. I think it's more like the ones that are operated by the national parks that I talked about early in the show. I listed 14 or so that are run by the parks. I think the Arizona is more like that, but I'd have to look it up to see. I don't remember it being on the list of these, which are operated by the Veterans Administration, cemeteries or whatever.
I think Kay's poking me in the eye a little bit. At least when you watch Winnie the Pooh, you got grandkids.
Yeah, I don't have any either, Kay.
And I'm not poking you. I'm not poking you in the eye, Kay. I'm just saying. I hope it just means you got grandkids. That's cool.
Man, I just looked at the time. Okay, I better get moving here. I know people have things to do, but
since when have you ever said that?
Since when have I ever said I need to get moving?
Like I'm looking at the time I need to get moving.
Well, pretty rare, but okay, now you're poking me now for sure. Making the ribs. Anyway, that's funny. In Illinois, I picked Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery. And this is one of those that I said I was going to bring up something else. And the Abraham Lincoln, God dang it, quit that. In the Abraham Lincoln Cemetery, excuse me, also includes what they call, is known as the Confederate Mound, and spelled just like I hope it sounds, and it represents The Confederate mound was part of Camp Douglas, which was established as a Union training camp south side of Chicago, where this cemetery is. And when Fort Donelson was captured during the Civil War, one of the first major Union victories, which mostly were all in the West at that time, or what was considered the Western theater of that war, those prisoners were taken to this place,
to Chicago,
and that's because they took them to a
you wonder why they were angry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather been at Camp Douglas in Chicago. Chicago wasn't the same back then. I think I'd rather go there than Andersonville, which I'm going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But when those cities were captured, they were often taken to an established army camp or military camp, and that's where they were not interred, incarcerated, I guess would be the word. And and some of those prisoners back in that time period, it was hard to have that many prisoners in one small space, usually, which is kind of what happened in Andersonville. Well, which is what happened in Andersonville. And they did that when they had large dials, it was usually because of sanitation and diseases caused by that, or by disease like smallpox. And they'd have, and that's what happened here, and that's why the Chicago Mound, Confederate Mound, is included in this list, is because these men were prisoners of war during the Civil War. And anyway, I'm trying to read all my notes, and there were more than 26,000 Confederate prisoners kept at this particular camp, and about 4,000 of those died. Oops. And then they talk a little bit about Andersonville. Let me see if I've got this in the right or wrong spot here. Andersonville. This is a quote by Robert H. Kellogg, who was a survivor of Andersonville. Said Andersonville becomes an object lesson in patriotism. To this retired and beautiful spot will thousands resort in the long years to come. I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. To learn again and again lessons of heroic sacrifice made by those who so quietly sleep in these long rows of graves. So prisoner of war camps, especially Confederate ones, unfortunately had that issue. The Confederacy didn't have the money to feed prisoners. They didn't have the food to feed. They were struggling to feed themselves and their soldiers, much less Yankee prisoners. And they put them in Andersonville, which was never meant to hold 40,000 men or whatever were there. And I think in about 14 months or so, a little over a year, at least 13,000 soldiers died. That's in Andersonville. And the cemetery today has 20,000 internments. And it says burial locations can be located on. So I guess that's an open cemetery. I'm not sure how you get into that one, but Andersonville is a national cemetery. I'll get to that in a minute. As part of this group. And that's really, I put that here because that's not included in my list, but Andersonville and Fort Douglas, and that's how these things happened. This is Lakeside Soldiers Lot. This is in Michigan, which I thought was kind of a serene location. And here's a contrast. I was talking about the headstones earlier. You can see in this photograph, in the background, you see just civilian, typical cemetery layout and the headstones and whatnot, all kinds of sizes and shapes. But you get over here to the military part, and it's very organized, and they're all the same. And that's it. When you see that in real life, I don't know, it just always real striking to me. This is the Beverly National Cemetery in New Jersey. John, I don't know. Do you know where this is? There's two national cemeteries in New Jersey. This is being one. It's located in Edgewater Park Township. John, is that near you by any chance? I didn't look this one up on a map. It's a 64-acre area and as of 2021, it had 50,000 internments in it. So it's a pretty good sized cemetery.
50,000?
Yeah. And I don't think this
So
is.
think about that. That's like almost the number of troops we lost in Vietnam.
Yeah, real close.
58.
Yeah. Is that what the number? I didn't know what that number is.
58,000.
8,000 more.
50,000 people were interred there.
That's I meant 8,000 more were killed in Vietnam. So
I'm
that's not much.
I'm gonna be like in a rawhide box out here hanging on a tree. There'll be one interred there.
One. Yeah.
Well, me and maybe some ancient folks.
Well, Brenda and I had a long discussion about that the other day. So I got to get it on paper so it's legal. But thanks to you, I finally figured out some of that, how I'm going to do it.
I didn't even mean to start that, dude. But
no, I know. But I was already. I mean, I've thought about it. Brenda and I, she can tell you, I have talked about that for years. And I wasn't quite sure how to pull it off. Now that'll work. Anyway, that's another. We can talk about that another day. This is Woodlawn National Cemetery in Elmira, New York. And New York has 11 national cemeteries, which doesn't surprise me so much because since a lot of these cemeteries came about as a result of dead from the Civil War, New York, there were a lot of soldiers in the Civil War from New York. So this doesn't really surprise me much that there's a lot of them up there. It's the most famous burials. And this particular cemetery, I picked this for this reason out of the 11. I just had to figure out which one I wanted to put in there. Mark Twain and his wife, Olivia Langdon Clemens, well, Mark Twain's real name was Clemens, are buried here. There's a bunch of United States Congress people that are buried there. They also, it's also distinct because there are a lot of Confederate prisoners were again interred here. Elmira Prison was dubbed Elmira by the inmates. So, and again, like I say, nothing compared to Andersonville in the South, but it was bad enough. None of them were good. The lane that Mark Twain and his wife gravesite says both those cemeteries are still active. I don't know. I guess that means people can still see them and come to say, I'd like to go there. That's one of the places I'd like to go if I get up that way. I've thought about that. I've thought about that, authors and people that I'd like to stand at their grave and say hi to. Mark Twain, Seton, people like that who are buried in some.
Is he buried in New Mexico?
Who? Seton?
ETL.
No, he's buried in New York.
Seriously?
Yeah, of all places.
He lived there.
Yeah, but I thought he would be in New Mexico too, but he's not.
I can't believe he's not at Philmont.
Yeah, it surprised me too.
We need to make a raid.
Pretty sure there's a monument there for him, similar to what might be a gravesite, but he's in New York. I've looked it up, and he may be in Woodlawn also.
I think you're right, Kay. I think active means that they can still take internments.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But in this case, it just says the graves of are still active, which I think what that means is the cemetery.
So,
But yeah,
I mean, if you can't go visit it, what the heck good is it?
well, that's a good point.
I'm,
No, you're right. I wasn't thinking that way. So
because Dad's dead, and
as far as I know, even the ones that say closed, which means exactly what Kay and you just said, that they're no longer taking, they don't do
they
internments
don't
there,
do interments anymore.
or even cremation type
Right.
ceremonies. But that doesn't mean they're closed. Somebody can't walk in there and
It's like some dude could be like on the Big Lebowski and like take your your MJB coffee can full of guy and like throw him out there. Who's gonna know?
I watched a TV show. Oh God, this is a little bit astray here. Which no, what's that? Oh,
What, we don't do that all the time.
Where's it? That's a shocker. We were watching a show on TV recently where there was a lady whose mother had passed away, and her mother had been awful to her growing up, pimped her out, that kind of awful.
Oh, that's awful.
And which had led to a life of drug and alcohol problems. But now she's a cop, and it's a good show, by the way. Anyway, she passed away, and it was like, well, now what? And her mother had already arranged to be cremated, I guess. And so she's got this box of ashes, it's this little cardboard box, and it's like, what am I going to do with this? So she decided she'd flush her, and then she realized what she'd done and was trying to get as much back as she could. It was just, anyway, it was a weird scene. This is Dayton, Ohio National Cemetery. There are 5 national cemeteries in Ohio, including 2 Confederate sites, which I am assuming were prisoner of war. Oh, let's see. I may have it written here. Yeah. Camp Chase was near Columbus in 61. It was a large camp, but became a prisoner camp. Camp was closed and dismantled after the war, and the site has been redeveloped as residential property. Wow. Except for the part that's the Confederate Cemetery, Camp Chase Confederate Cemetery, which contains 2,260 graves of Confederates who died in captivity, both in Camp Chase and in Camp Denison, which is near Cincinnati. Well, they're all kind of near Cincinnati.
Well, Columbus ain't.
Well, yeah. Well, okay.
If you gotta like be a Confederate prisoner that dies in Ohio, for God's sake, don't make it Flatlander, Ohio.
Well, that's a good point.
You want to be in the hill country.
Yeah, I would anyway if I was up there.
Uh-oh. I'm back. Had a dog issue in chipmunks.
Oh, did you now? Yeah, we just did
New Jersey, John. You missed it, buddy.
Well, hang on.
We were asking if it was near you.
There, Beverly National Cemetery, New Jersey, Edgewater Park Township. Is that near you, or do you know?
Oh, he said he never heard of Beverly.
Oh, okay. There's 50,000 internments there. That's pretty good size.
50,000.
I don't know if I've got it in here.
Total Vietnam dead.
Yeah.
58,000. And they got 50, and they're all military internments, I assume.
I assume in this case, yeah. I'm not positive, but I would assume so. The one it worked on is not
military veterans and maybe their spouses.
Maybe spouses, yeah.
It's near Philly. John said.
UK. This is Beaufort National Cemetery in South Carolina. And there are 4 national cemeteries in South Carolina. And again, I have to warn a caveat here is that there may be more when you include Confederate cemeteries. I don't know if they're all recognized or not in the South. I'm not sure how they've done some of those. But I do know there are some out there that are not on any list I've got. But I thought this was a good picture. I mean, it's South Carolina flat, for that part of South Carolina. But I love the trees, probably live oaks with all that Spanish moss hanging from them. And this is, I don't know why I included Tennessee because I was going alphabetically. And then I realized, well, I've already got 2 or 3 things from Tennessee. But I put this one in. There's one in Memphis. There's 6 in Tennessee. I put this one in because Brenda and I used to live right down the road from this one, at 3 or 4 miles from the house at the most. And then they did another one that Brenda mentioned earlier, which is near Straw Plains. I can't remember what. Brenda, do you remember, if you're still in here listening, do you remember the name of that one where your Uncle Rick is? So there's another one in Tennessee now, I think would make this 7, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it wasn't on the list I counted, but this one was just down the road from us, so I thought I'd include it anyway. And they did the flags a little differently. If you see that top, well, no, this is one coming up. Excuse me. This is Fort Sam. It's Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, Texas. And these flags are all in the center of the marker. And that's not how we were taught to do them. And we were taught to do them by the guys that ran the cemetery at Mountain Home. So I don't know. Maybe they've changed that. But we used to put them on the corner here. Pretty sure our left as we face the monument. I put 3 stones in here, and we can't.
You ever been to Sam Houston? You ever been to that part of Texas?
No.
The wind screams.
I don't doubt that.
If you put it out there where it's in the corner, like you normally would.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That flag ain't going to be there very long.
Well, maybe that's why.
They're tucking those flags up against those stones.
Well, maybe that's it. That makes
sense. Them in place.
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
We do the same thing in Wyoming.
Okay.
Well, at least in our little local cemetery, we put them right kind of like that. I wouldn't do that if I was in Kentucky or Southern Ohio, but here I would.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that.
It's just a logistical problem.
Okay. Yeah, get this. Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. It's 154.7 acres or 62.6 hectares.
I
couldn't resist. Anyway,
what's a ha?
There are 144,000 internments in this cemetery.
Really?
That's what the number was.
144,000.
144,000 in this cemetery in Texas that are.
And I don't know what they do with national cemeteries anymore. It used to be just men that were killed in combat, kind of a deal.
Yeah, but that's not that. If you're in the military at all now, because like my dad, he never made it to Korea. He was injured. Was here as a staff sergeant, trained people that did go to Korea. But he had the right.
He didn't go to theater.
He wasn't right. He was there.
He still got buried in a national cemetery.
Yeah.
Right. And your mother.
And my mother. In the same grave, but still she.
Yeah.
And I don't know when they may or may not have changed that.
It should be.
This whole system was established. It kind of got started after the Civil War, like I said earlier, but it was near World War II before they really set down some of these rules. And some of that's probably changed since then. So but anyway, we always called it Buford, not Beaufort. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for correcting me. I'll try to do better. We have a lot connected to churches. Okay. Well, we do too, but they're not, honored in this respect. But I could see why there'd be a lot of Confederate cemeteries that are attached to churches.
So if you go to the place where my dad's mom and dad are buried, and my uncle and his wife, and one of my nephews, and Hamilton Cemetery down the road from mom and dad, just like a few miles down the road from mom and dad there in the hills. Half the people in that cemetery, and it's an old cemetery, it's been there since before the Civil War. Well over half of the people in that cemetery are veterans.
Huh, interesting.
And you go there during like Decoration Day, it's just like flags are everywhere. It's, flowers are everywhere. It's might be the only time of the year, the only day of the year that people go to visit their relatives. But
Well,
I know all the names in the cemetery. Way too many of them. But
let me throw out a couple more things about Sam Houston that I put them in here. There are 27 Buffalo soldiers buried here. There's 140 Axis prisoners of war that were buried here from World War II.
Serious?
Yep. And there are 4 British Royal Air Force officers from World War II that are buried here. Not sure how that happened.
That's the oddest of the lot.
Yeah. And then there are, I was trying to count them.
Because the Axis boys got sent to the Great Plains to be farm workers. Nebraska, Texas, Oklahoma, various places. And a lot of them are like, I'm staying after the war. Like, I ain't going back to Germany.
There are at least 12 Medal of Honor winners at this cemetery.
How many of them are Buffalo soldiers?
I don't know. Here, let me see.
Because a bunch of them were received that award.
Yeah, but did they have it? Well, okay. No, never
They
mind.
received that award.
I know. No, I get that, but some of them didn't get it till way later. It may not be, but they should be on the list.
No, these weren't like later.
Okay.
A bunch of them received that award during the period of time they were fighting still.
Okay.
Especially in the Southwest.
Well, I get that. I just don't know. I don't know if any of them were in here.
I don't know that it made a bit of difference when they left the Southwest to go somewhere else. I know for one of them, he ended up in Nebraska at Fort Robinson, I think. And the fact that he was a black man that had won the Congressional Medal of Honor didn't mean a darn thing.
Well, that might be kind of what I was getting at in a way. So they may not, it's not, I don't see it, so I'm not sure. Although I do see several here that were in Vietnam in this list. A couple of warrant officers, helicopter pilots. Most of them are World War II veterans. I thought I saw somebody else. And there's one in here that served during the Philippine-American War, which was, I think that was right after World War I or just before World War I. I can't remember.
It was before the Spanish-American War.
Okay, so it was
just prior to the Spanish-American War. We were sticking our thumb in the eye of Spain.
Right. Oh, that's right.
And we went to the Philippines first. I think that's where Dewey was at. That kind of started the whole dang thing off, and then we ended up in Cuba.
That not a fun fact, but a little fact for someone like you and I. One of the reasons why the military ended up with a 45 caliber automatic handgun for a long time is the basic weapon, or the issued handgun. Not always, but in a lot of places it's because of that Philippine War.
Yeah, and some dude named Tiffany was probably involved with the whole thing. He was certainly making them machine guns.
Well, it could be.
A guy that's making like silver cufflinks. He was also making, like in the back shop, he was making machine like
Yeah,
like liquid cooled machine guns.
brownies. Yeah. Anyway, that's Texas. Cheyenne National Cemetery, Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Holy buckets! Look at that. There's nothing out there.
Yeah, holy buckets, how flat. No doubt a place where they put the flags, like you were saying.
That's just north of my. That's just north of my sister-in-law's house. Not northwest of my sister-in-law's house.
This one was created in 2020.
Yeah.
Not been there that long. Or not, it's probably been there, but it's not a national cemetery since 2020. I don't know how many people, how many internments are there or what, but
I don't think it was a cemetery before that. I think it like literally was brand new. Like
it looks brand new.
the old cemeteries in town are in like down in the treed part of town where the cottonwoods grow, and this is out on the prairie.
Where they look like they've planted some.
Straight west of my sister-in-law's house, like within a couple miles.
Look at the left side of that, the larger picture there. They planted some trees. Look how they're all, look what direction they're all pointing.
Just like the flags are.
Just like to the east, I would imagine. Or southeast.
Yeah, kind of southeast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put this in, and Diana and Mike are gone, but I put this in because this is near Manitoba, Canada.
They might be there today.
They might be.
Didn't Diana say that she was going to like sell raffle tickets for her son's cadet corps?
Yeah, she did. I don't know exactly what all for.
Associated with one of these deals for decoration. I bet she's there right now.
Yeah, I'd say so. Let me see. I've got some information about this. Hang on, let me run through it real quick.
You have to ask her.
There are 100,000. This is one of the largest in Canada with more than 100,000 burials.
Wow.
And they're filled of as well as a field of honor with more than 10,000 veterans, service members, and war heroes interned alongside each other. That's at least an A group. Since 2001, the role of the National Military Cemetery has been to honor Canadian Armed Forces members and veterans who served the nation with distinction and give them final resting place. Blah, blah, blah. And I got a little bit more about this. That's the field of honor is what this monument, the biggest picture. That cross says, "Least we forget." I don't know if you can read that or not. I thought this was interesting down here as part of section. That's where it's got a monument that says Navy on top. So I have to assume that's naval veterans. And that's the front gate of it up there. I put two. I didn't do this on the other, but since I'm talking about a whole country here, I thought they deserve more than one recognition. There's also, and actually, these two ran together. That's what it was. It's called the Brookside Cemetery National Historic Site, is how they refer to their such things in Canada. And there's kind of two parts to that. And it's near Ottawa. There's two. Damn it. See, they got me confused. There's two. There's another national. I got another picture here, right here. And this is another one. It's in Ontario, Ottawa, Ontario, capital of the country. And this one was established the first soldiers that were ever buried at this location was in 1885. And there's two sections of it managed by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, a veteran section owned by the Veterans Affairs of Canada, and the National Military Cemetery of the Canadian Forces, created in 2001, owned and managed by the Federal Department of National Defense. I bet that's not confusing. Two different agencies running it. First monument in the cemetery was erected by members of the 2nd Ottawa Field Battery in the 1870s. I'm reading real quick over here. I know The cemetery inspired classic Canadian poem in Beechwood Cemetery by Archibald Lapman, with its memorable final line, they know no season but the end of time. That's interesting. They've done something else here. They've recognized First Nations veterans to help, recognize the indigenous people for serving in the military. And this one stone I've got here has two different symbols that they use that are related to First Nations people. The one is the medicine wheel, or a version, and the bottom one is an infinity symbol that some tribes up there used, apparently, or something very similar. They talk about the two symbols. And then, according to the Canadian Armed Forces, this is the first time in the National Military Cemetery history that Indigenous spirituality symbols are officially approved to be engraved on military headstones. I don't know if we do that here, so that's interesting. I know we put sometimes, like Brenda said, sometimes they're marked with graves can be marked with different symbols, like a Jewish star, and I can't remember what they put in for Christians other than a cross. So I don't know, but I don't know if we recognize Native Americans. We should. They certainly served. The inclusion of indigenous symbols for military headstones is another important step toward reconciliation. I won't go into all that, but I copied all that. But anyway, that's something a little different. It's in the Canadian National Cemetery. And the end. I know there's probably people breathing a sigh of relief. Kay may be the only one, and John may be the only ones that are still hanging around. And they're probably thinking, "Oh my God, thank goodness." But like somebody said earlier,
natives, we get for soldiers or Marines or Navy personnel that were Air Force personnel that were killed in battle that were natives. They'll be basically coup sticks with eagle feathers hanging on them, planted at like on Decoration Day, like where we put a flag in. They'll put a flag in and then like a coup stick, which is cool.
That's cool.
I think.
Have you ever seen a symbol on a gravestone itself?
No.
Military. I hadn't either. But you know what? If they are.
I mean, heck, they don't even put symbols that the people that aren't natives were buried there.
Okay. Well, I know they don't.
I mean, they don't like, oh, here's Frederick Buckingham, died, born this day, died this day. That's all it says. And there's nothing on there that would describe the human being that's in the grave.
But there are, okay, back here we have, like Brenda said, they do put that on some.
Well, I mean, if you go to that
John's cooking,
that graveyard in France.
Yeah, right.
All the Christians had a cross. All the Jewish folks had a Star of David.
Yeah, Star of David.
If you were like Little Joe Coyote from the Northern Cheyenne tribe that my dad served with, and he got killed, what would they have done?
Yeah, that's why I don't know, because I've never seen anything. That's what I was getting at. That's where I was trying to get to anyway. John is cooking. He's frying onions and peppers and sausage, peppers, onions sandwiches. John.
Oh my God.
That is one of the most amazing smells in the whole wide world.
You're hurting my soul.
When Phil and I used to go to Bike Week in Daytona. We used to laugh about
he's cooking ribs. Okay, you're good, dude.
Potato salad.
If you were just making sandwiches out of sausage and peppers and onions, I'm out.
If you go to like a bike festival, big festival like that, or the fair for that matter, there's always somebody cooking that very thing, and you can smell it everywhere. Phil and I used to refer to it as biker sausage because that's where we usually found it was at biker gatherings. They'd have a booth set up, and somebody'd be cooking that very same thing. And I'm not kidding you. That aroma is all it just spreads everywhere.
Biker sausage.
That's what we called it. I mean, we were just poking at the bear that was. Kids are coming over later. Well, save me a bite, would you?
I'm making up a big old batch of homemade tacos here in a while.
Tacos?
Well, for me and my daughter, we're gonna have tacos.
When's everybody supposed to be coming home?
I don't use no pre-packaged taco sauce. I cook my meat with oregano and cumin, and boy howdy, put a little tater in there. Cheese.
You're killing me. And what do you put it on? Soft tacos, hard tacos?
I take corn tortillas about that big around, and I put them in the skillet one at a time and turn them, fold them.
I do that.
And then just a little bit, and then.
See, Brenda, you hope you're watching, Brenda. See, I'm not the only one that does that kind. I usually do it with I do a lot of
If
flour.
you buy them like goddamn yucky yellow things that come in a box that you like that are already folded, them ain't.
No, I don't do that.
That's not a tortilla.
No.
Homie Joe would beat the snot out of me if he caught me making tacos like that. All my Hispanic brethren and sistren would come up and beat
you with a big stick. I always put if I do flour tortillas, I always do the same thing. I put a little butter on them and
in the skillet and blow them in there.
And then I put they're the best. And Brenda always made fun of me doing that or pointed fingers at me like, why do you do that? It's too much trouble. See, I'm not the only one.
It ain't too much trouble. It's about the taste.
It's about the taste. That's right.
And your boy can make a gordita. I can make a gordita, like a real gordita.
Oh my God, I'd like to have Brenda. We're gonna have that for food and supper real soon, so just bear that in mind.
If you go to the Kent Rollins site, Cowboy Kent, he's got a whole deal about making real gorditas.
Which a lot of people don't even know what that is. Maybe someday.
If you're thinking Taco Bell right now, you're an idiot.
Wrong. You ain't never had a real gordita. I won't say you're an idiot, but I will say you've never had a real.
There's a very small part of the country that gorditas are native to. It's real close to West Texas and southern New Mexico and northern Chihuahua.
And you go up here, you can't even find somebody that's from of Mexican descent or cooking in a Mexican restaurant. They don't even know what a gordita is.
No, because it's so regional.
Right. It's so regional. I figured that out after years of looking for them.
It's just
making me hungry.
But Cowboy Kent got the recipe.
Yeah.
Using masa and making your own dough.
I'm gonna
oh my God, they're good.
Hey, I've seen it at flea markets here too. The big Nashville flea market always had a food area, and they used to cook sausages there too.
Hey,
I'm telling you,
you guys are making me hungry. Well, John started it.
It's John's fault. We weren't even talking about food today. Well, so no, if you want to be technical, we were talking about eating dogs earlier.
At the very start of the show, we talked about dog makes a fine meal.
Yeah, so maybe we did start
it. Which is a stupid thing to say, but it was funny on the movie.
Brenda's talking about the religious affiliation on some of the stuff.
Remember they stole what's his buckets, Great Danes. What's his bucket? Who was the
Custer?
British general
Oh,
at Yorktown?
oh wait,
Cornwallis.
Yeah, Cornwallis.
They stole. The guy was loosely based off the Swamp Fox, Francis Marion.
Right.
Who I have 3 relatives named after that man.
Which is part of the country.
In my family, Francis Marion Zorns, 3 of them.
Huh, interesting.
And the Swamp Fox.
The Swamp Fox.
He which Disney made a movie of, I think.
They did. Well, a series, it was sort of a mini series.
Oh yeah. And
I have
the Swamp Fox, the guy that Mel Gibson was playing in The Patriot, which is arguably loosely based on fact.
Right.
But it was a cool movie anyway. They capture Cornwallis's dogs, the 2 Great Danes.
Hang on just a minute.
You always do this to me.
No, I hear something outside, and it sounds.
Yeah, it's probably a motorcycle.
No, in this case, it was an airplane, and boy, was it making a funny noise. Okay, sorry, it's gone now. I guess it was just.
Might be for me too. What the hell was I talking about? The Swamp Fox. They in the movie The Patriot, they captured.
Oh yeah. The dog.
They captured Cornwallis's 2 Great Danes, and one of the like hillbilly like Appalachian soldiers that he had fighting with him said, "I say that we like burn the papers." They had all of his journals, like. We burn those papers to start a fire, and we eat the dogs. and some the French guy that was with them was like, "Eat the dogs," and he's like, "Oh yeah, dog is a fine meal."
I don't remember. See, I've seen that movie, but probably not more than a couple of times, and I don't remember all that stuff. I wish I could retain that.
They're sitting in the swamp, like, and that's what. Oh yeah, dog makes a fine meal. Which I have a lot of native people that would say the exact same. A lot of native friends that would say the exact same thing.
But he says, I like how he made a bullet out of his kid's toy soldier.
Yeah, so he took all those lead painted soldiers and melted them down and made.
Which is what they really were made out of back
then. And made ball out of it.
Yeah. They were made out of lead back then and painted usually, that's how they put the uniform on them, if you will.
Yeah, and that was good for a kid to like carry around in his pocket all the time. Of course, so was a big handful of 22 shells.
Now, who would have done that?
People are like, "Oh, you can't have them go through the dryer. They'll cook off." And I'm like, my mother dried in the dryer 1,207,423 22 cartridges, and never one did they cook off.
John says he misses his Ruger 1022. I'd like to have a 1022, John. I've always kind of wanted one of them.
I have a buddy that hunts. In this country, you can hunt rough grouse and blue grouse with a 22 or a rock or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And
because they said,
where we grew up, you had to use a shotgun, but here you could use whatever you want because they're just eating birds. They taste too good to let them go away.
Yeah.
And I have a buddy that carries a 10-22 everywhere he goes in the fall. He's got like a big game rifle and a 10-22 with him too,
Grouse.
just in case a grouse attacks him.
I could see doing that.
And then I have another buddy that carries a Ruger pistol.
Automatic.
What's heavy duty, kind of a bull barrel 22? I want one. It's a pretty heavy duty barrel, but it's just a 22 caliber. Most accurate little pistol I ever shot.
They are. They're great. Right out of the box, they're accurate.
I've shot many a ruffled grouse when it was attacking me with one of those.
Brenda, be nice now. Don't be careful.
Who was you going?
She said, "Who are you going to shoot, John?" He said, "But he's talking about his 22."
He lives in the like close to the Delmarva Peninsula. He could go down there and kill big old fox squirrels.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
Them big old like black, white nosed fox squirrels. I don't know how common they are. No prairie dogs in New Jersey, but there's fox squirrels, John.
Yeah, and those fox squirrels are kind of famous too.
And they make a good meal.
Yeah, they would. If they're as big as they are down here, they'd
go good with clams and some flounder fillets.
Yeah, I bet so. And if you cooked them, sliced them up right and everything, you could cook them right in there amongst them.
Excuse me, John. I mean fluke fillets.
Fluke. Oh, merciful heavens! Well, guys, as the car guy says, once again, you figured out a way to waste 3 hours.
Wasted a perfectly good morning listening to our butt stuff.
He said her dad had a German Luger from World War I. Oh, really, Kay? That's interesting. And a nice pistol, also. That, especially if it was World War I. Those are not only collectible, but a nice little handgun. And
just don't trust the safety. Ask Kubler from Band of Brothers.
Oh yeah. Or you better make sure you know how it works. One.
He's from what's the darn town? Manchester, Ohio, just southeast or southwest of Mom and Dad's house. He's like
that's where
Hubler was from. He was a hill kid that grew up hunting stuff and living in the woods and ended up shooting himself in the darn femur or in the carotid artery with a stupid German Luger.
That he grabbed for a souvenir.
Yeah, he shot the dude. It was a German officer that was like riding a horse.
Yeah.
And he turned around like run from these guys when they popped out of the woods on him. And Hubler like shot him out of the saddle from who knows how far away with a rifle and got that pistol and always had wanted one and ended up killing himself with it. Not on purpose. Yeah, just don't trust the safety.
Okay, that's probably fairly accurate. Some of those things are very collectible to this day. I mean, there's a guy online that I used to follow pretty regular because he said some interesting stuff. But he's specialized in Lugers and World War II memorabilia. If it had Nazi stuff on it, but pre-World War I, of course, wasn't Nazis. But that's when that pistol came out before World War I. Oh, I got something. I'm glad you said that, Kay. I was just looking at a picture yesterday. I don't remember. I'm going to find it. And it's a bunch of cowboys sitting around in a bar or doing something. Oh, I'm trying to think who painted it. And they were shooting at, oh, maybe it was a photograph. And they were shooting at this guy's feet, making him dance. They were saying that this was a kind of a dangerous thing that cowboys participated in sometimes. And one of the guys is sitting there with a Mauser pistol, just like the one that the kid had in the John Wayne movie, Big Jake.
Really?
Yeah, really, from that same time period as when that movie was supposed to be. And there he was with a German Mauser. And I thought, well, who would have thunk that? I mean, it's similar to a Luger K, but a little different. And the shape is so you can't mistake it for anything else.
And the Germans have been masters of engineering firearms since
long time,
the 1400s.
Yeah.
And anything they built was pretty handy. Again, the Luger had at least the later Lugers had a safety issue, but they were still finely made weapons.
Well, the military wise, the more they stopped making as many and issuing as many Lugers during World War II because they were such a finely made weapon that they were more expensive to produce.
Right.
So they started making another fine handgun, I think, and that's a Walther. PPKs or PPKs.
A PPK is a pretty good pistol,
and they were cheaper enough that's what they started issuing. But that they've been making stuff like that for a long, long time. So all right, brother, I'm going to let you
go. This to your wife. I found this tiger shark tooth out back.
Well, she's probably watching. She's in it.
It's got serrations and everything. It's he's
been sitting there cleaning the dirt off. I've heard it.
That's the fine weaponry that I build. And I made this little beauty yesterday.
That's nice too. So what you're doing is
I have a whole rack of these that my wife's grandfather picked up in western Nebraska in a big bison kill site.
They're shaped like that.
And the points are literally that big.
Oh, they're not big like people used to think.
They didn't need. You didn't need a big old arrowhead to kill a buffalo. You could use some little bitty tiny thing like that to kill a buffalo.
Razor and at least twice as deadly.
Yeah, you poke that through a lung, he'd gone down, or she.
When you were holding it there, I thought you were actually making it look like a shark's tooth on purpose, and then you turned it over.
No, this one's
I get it now.
This one is I was napping on this piece of stone, and I'm like, that's starting to look like a tiger shark tooth. Yeah. So I thought I'd leave it like that just for Brenda's benefit.
Cool. I heard
we still need to go to northern Florida.
Yeah, we do. We need to go down.
I just saw another one yesterday. Daggone your backside.
I've got to catch up on them.
There's a whole nother dude, Digging Science. I think that's his deal. And he's worse than all of them. I'm just like, oh my God, I gotta go.
There's also another one that I think Digging Science and this guy may know each other, kind of like Wild Kyle and what's his name? I think they're called. Oh, geez, it was just in my head.
Paleo, Alabama.
No.
And those guys are hooked up with the Wild Kyle.
Maybe it's adventure archaeologist.
Oh yeah, I saw that popped up too, and I'm like, nope, I'm not clicking on it.
I'm not gonna do it.
I was trying to watch the PBR finals, and I'm like, no, I'm not hitting that button because it's going to suck me down a vortex.
It'll suck you right into something else.
They were finding, they found like this great big, perfectly preserved fossil bobcat jaw.
Oh, wow.
And it was a big, like heavy duty, like it had to have been a big male.
Yeah. And it was fossilized.
And then a whole bunch of black bear teeth. And these are all fossilized.
Where are they digging at?
It was a goddamn digging science guy, and he was diving in Florida.
Oh, okay.
In one of those little creeks, and he was like, well, I can't go over to that hole over there because there's a big gator laying in it right now. I can see him down there, and I'm like, the hell with that.
Yeah, I've seen. I know that
like,
guy now.
There's like a 10-foot alligator laying in that hole right over there, and he was diving over here like maybe 10 yards away, and I'm like, what are you doing?
I mean, a gator can move from those two. I mean, he could shorten that distance.
He could be there so quick.
Faster than you can get away. Let's just put it that way.
I guess your little fins aren't going to like make you swim faster than that gator with that big tail.
No. No. That's the problem with diving in those areas. I'm not sure.
It was one of those little creeks through the woods, through the swampy looking spot, and there was a big deep hole over there again on not an oxbow, but a bend in that creek. There's a big deep hole, and he was like down there under the water with his snorkel and filming with his little GoPro. And like he looks underneath the root wad, and there's this ginormous alligator laying there. And I'm like, I can tell you where I'm going to be up on that bank.
Yeah, quick, dude. Watch me walk on water here for a minute.
I don't care. I mean, I've backed up from a hognose snakes before.
If you don't think I can't back up from a gator, you're wrong. That's those guys. I mean, I've told you about my buddy that was in Florida at one of these Crystal River kind of places where they have glass bottom boats and and all that kind of stuff where they take tourists and you can see the gators and the fish and all that down. He was standing there on the dock. He wasn't actually doing that. He was there doing something else. And he was a fish biologist when I met him, but he was also a forester. And he said they looked down one day and there goes a gator swimming. This literally happened. And they had a big area that they had a signs up that said, do not swim below this point.
Because they'll eat you.
And they looked down where this is an area where you weren't supposed to be in the water. And there went a gator swimming down with a guy in his mouth.
Oh, man.
Carried him off down through there. He was in that area where he wasn't supposed to be. And sure enough, one of them got him.
You can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go where I want to, by God.
I have cousins like that. You can't tell me what to do. Like, well, okay. Hold my beer and watch this.
Yeah, just go right ahead. Yeah.
All right, brother.
All right, guys. Kay, John, eat a sandwich for me, buddy. You've got me hungry. I'm just gonna tell you. If I knew where I could get me a sausage and onion and pepper sandwich right now, I'd go get one. Anyway,
biker sauce.
You take care, bro. Have a good taco. Say hi to Caitlin and everybody else when they get home.
I will.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Love you, bro.
Memorial Day. Do what you do and have fun and just think about the guys who left us, the heroes we all know. So anyway, love you guys. See you later. Talk to you soon, brother.
Later on.
Later.